Hi, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great. So, I want to discuss a very rare planetary alignment that's going to be going on in the month of August. And I'm going to focus this video just on that. I'm going to go through with each of the signs, and I'm actually going to pull up the chart so that I could show you exactly what I'm speaking about because I know it can get a little confusing. Um, but we have the big outer planets, right? Which would be Saturn, Uranus, those are together. Saturn and Neptune are together, plus Uranus and Pluto are in a beautiful planetary alignment that they haven't been in since 1844. So it's very, very rare. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's not only a lot of astrologers are talking about those four together, but there's actually even better stuff on top of this, right? Jupiter conjuncting Venus, the way Mercury is working in the mix. It's just delicious. This is a lovely, lovely energy. So, I don't want to speak about it too much. I'm just going to break it out into each of the signs so you could jump around in the timestamps however you'd like. If you're new here, by the way, my name is Jackie. If you enjoy my work, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing. And if you would like to work with me privately, all the information is in the description box below the video. And I am running a couple of specials for the rest of the summer. But without further ado, let's get into each of the signs. Aries. So let's break this out for you. Let me just do a little bit of shared screen so you guys could see what I'm talking about. I don't want you to be confused. All right, let's open this up here. Okay. So we have Pluto. Pluto is a core player here. But remember the outer planets, just to be clear here, the outer planets are life-changing. When we're talking about Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus, these are life-changing. Unlike Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury, where those are a lot more connected to our day-to-day experience as well as our moods and our emotions, right? So we can have those quick transits to kind of get over it and just move on. Whereas those outer planets, especially those four outer planets, are aligning. When they align, they really do impact us, and they're in just beautiful, beautiful situation. So let's just look at your chart, right? This is going to be for Aries rising. When we're talking about the house placement difference, depending on where your Aries is, you're still going to be feeling much of what I'm saying here. So look at Pluto. So Pluto's at 2 degrees in Aquarius, right? And I queued it up to August 11th because I just really, really love this day because Mercury will finally be out of retrograde. He comes out of retrograde on August 10th, and that's of course in your fifth house here. This little guy here is Mercury. But let's go back to Pluto. So Pluto, what is Pluto? Pluto is about change and transformation. He's the modern ruler of the eighth house. He rules Scorpio, which is about life and death, endings and beginnings. Absolute commitment. It also rules divorce. It rules debt, taxes, other people's money, the stock market, real estate, any kind of investment that you are generating, financial benefit from. It rules mortgages as well. Um, but it's change and transformation. It rules astrology, it rules psychology, it also rules any sort of like detective work, anything like that. It rules the general occult. So that's Pluto, right? So Pluto is retrograde, and we've discussed this before, but let's take a look at his positioning. He's 2 houses away. You see Saturn here and Neptune here, at 1 degree in the sign of Aries in your sign. So that's called a sextile for those of you who aren't sure what that is. And that's a beautiful alignment. It's very supportive. And this is about, we talk about the stars being lined up. Man, oh man, are they lined up in August? This is a beautiful energy. And look, we've been feeling these big changes that have been going on. But this particular alignment that's going on, we're talking about societal changes, we're talking about political changes, the whole affect of the way we view things and what we understand to be true is going to be very impacted by this transit, and it's going to be for the betterment of us, not bad, right? That's just generally as far as society goes. But looking at you here, we have Pluto in a sextile to Saturn and your and Neptune, which are both retrograde as well. We're going to discuss that. We've been discussing this, but it's also in a trine to Neptune. Trine is easy peasy energy. It's like so beautiful. We don't even have to try anything. The only thing is we have to be careful. It's very easy for us to let a trine go. Very easy, where it's like something is so comfortable and so easy that we kind of don't even bother really throwing our energy into it. It's almost like a given kind of thing. So we don't want to take anything for granted, right, during this time to get the most out of this transit. But what I think is really interesting, Aries, is check it out, right? Because we're going that Pluto energy is in the 11th house. It's very high in your chart. It's very public, right? This is still a very public part of your energy. We talked about what Pluto is. It's in Aquarius in the 11th house, very exalted here because this is Aquarius's home, and which has to do with your future goals and gains, older siblings, stepchildren, grandchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law. It has to do with technology. Technology is the 11th house is ruled by Uranus, right? Uranus rules technology, advances in science, advances in medicine, money for the future, right? Your retirement, things like that. Pluto retrograde is very controlling. So you're right, you're in a space where like you're very serious about thinking about your future. You're very serious about who you're choosing to be friends with. You could be very serious about the groups that you're involved with. And when I say very serious, I mean shaking the dead wood off the tree, right? Realizing like who are your ride or dies and who aren't. And seeing things from a different perspective, right? When it comes to this part of your life, right? So we have all of that energy going on, and it's sextiling your first house. And the first house represents the path that you're walking on. The first house represents the affect that you show to people, right? So it's like the version of you that people, when they meet you, that they know before they really, really get to meet you. So it's literally your physical presentation to other people and how it is that they initially understand you, at least in the beginning, right? But more importantly, probably most importantly, it does represent the path that you're walking on in your life. It's all about fresh path, new perspective. It's the house where we're meant to be the most brave, where it's like, I'm going to do this. And somebody's like, how are you going to do it? I'm not sure, but I know what I want to do, I hired you. You have to figure it out, or, help me figure it out, or something like that. So it's this kind of, I'm not going to say false bravado because it's genuinely very brave, but it's almost like a childlike braveness, not immature, but childlike, right? Because it's like, I know what I want to do. I see what I see in my mind's eye, and I really want to manifest this for myself. Maybe I just don't know exactly how to get there. I could be a little confused. You could be a little confused because you have this Neptune in there. So Neptune's working with Saturn. Saturn is very connected to career. It's very connected to the manifestation of mother energy for some of you. It's very connected to um, your very long-term goals. Now, I do want to say that Saturn is very connected to the skin as well. Just throw a little medical astrology in for everybody. Very connected to the skin as well. We have a conjuncting at 1 degree Neptune, both retrograde. And the first house is very physical. So some of you Aries might be dealing with like weird nonsense going on. And it might have been happening already over the past 6 months, whether it be like, oh, a little something, something. Oh no, I have skin cancer, or, it's precancerous, or I have this weird rash, or I have these, something like that. Very on brand for this. I don't want you to worry about it too much because this is a transit that does tend to activate some sort of medical situation that goes on there. The first house also does rule from the neck, the like the clavicle up, right? So anything having to do with the thyroid, the pituitary gland, everything having to do with the mind, the brain, ear, nose, throat, anything like that. Again, because it is conjuncting Neptune, there could be some challenges having to do with the health, but it's sextiling Pluto. And it's also sextiling Uranus. So, and Uranus is advances in science, advances in medicine. The reason I'm saying that is because if something comes up, there's going to be some sort of solution to it. There's going to be a dealing with it in a very good way. So I don't want you to worry about it if some sort of medical issue does come up, all right, having to do with the medical. But the first path, that first house, again, is also just the path that you're walking on. Now, the Saturn and Neptune are also sextiling Uranus in the third house of communication, of how it is that you think. It's teaching, it's your neighborhood, your neighbors, your siblings, your extended family. It rules your stuff. When I say stuff, like your car and your computer and your phone, like the physical parts of it, right? That's all very third house. Third house is also very connected to like doing business as kind of thing, right? So we have Uranus in there. So this can manifest as, creating some sort of new curriculum, writing something new, connecting with new people, having a new member, a new person join your family, right? It could be that. Um, it could be thinking very different because Uranus is very connected to your future, rethinking your future in a very good way, but in a way where you may be learning some sort of technology because Uranus does rule technology. The third house is learning something from the grassroots up. Equally so, it could indicate you starting a podcast, some sort of YouTube channel, anything having to do with technology, connecting with people through technology, anything like that. Really, really nice. Now, I want you to notice here in the fourth house, we also have Venus and Jupiter are conjunct in the sign of Cancer. Oh, I mean, Jupiter is the most exalted in that fourth, in the sign of Cancer, and it's in the fourth house. Jupiter is so flipping happy in that space. Oh my goodness, right? Now, I know it's also within a 1 degree conjunction of Hades, and Hades is a very psychological energy, and it's very connected to us feeling sort of like alone, and is everybody on the same page as me, or some sort of subtle sadness underneath everything, having to do with some sort of family issue. But on the other side, it's conjuncting Venus. So this is beautiful energy having to do with home, family, property, real estate, your emotional security. So good stuff is happening, Aries, right? But underneath it, you may feel a little sad about something. Could be something going on with one of your kids, or something going on sort of underneath the surface having to do with your marriage, or some sort of emotion that you're nursing having to do with your living environment, maybe a little bit of everything, right? But the thing is, everything is so beautifully situated here. It just is. It's this very nice energy that's just meant to, because Mars is also, by the way, included in this mix. Now you look at this and you go, hold on, Jackie, is that really actually a good thing that these two, Saturn and Neptune, are actually opposing Mars? Right? We pay attention to the 10-degree orb right outside of these the degrees. I don't want to get too complicated, but the opposition can mean like a bit of a push-pull energy. And what is Mars, right? Mars is fresh path, new perspective. I want something different. He's the warrior energy. Now, when Mars is in the seventh house in Libra, yeah, we could be arguing with a significant other or a boss or bosses, or arguing with ourselves about what it is that we do on our day-to-day experience, having to do with our energetic output at work, because it's in that first house. Like, so you may be in this push-pull place having to do with a situation going on with your spouse, or a situation going on even having to do with work, or how it is that you're working, if not a boss or a significant other. This push-pull energy, I'm not worried about it though, right? That's a personal planet. It's going to leave. Something fated is going to be happening. And I'm telling you, I do believe that for you guys, a lot of this is going to be very connected to a very fated conversation that's going to be going on from, like, I want to say, like the middle of August, right? A very important conversation. Why am I saying that? Because it's sextiling Mercury that is now going to be direct in the fifth house. So a very important conversation with a partner having to do with fifth house energy, about a business, about one of your children, about the romance or lack thereof in the relationship. But the thing is this, it's a fated, when I say fated, I mean, it's a conversation that needs to be had, that once you have it, it's going to be very blessed. This is such a beautiful energy, guys. It's really, really good. Now, let's just look at this from the other side. Let's look at it from Pluto. Pluto is in the 11th house, up in, at 2 degrees opposing Mercury at 4 degrees in Leo. Again, this opposition. Now, oppositions aren't really bad. And this is, I often say this, we want to think about it as two people sitting across from each other at a table and saying, we are not leaving here until we figure this out. Like, we're going to just figure this out. And that's really what an opposition is. It can feel like a push-pull as it does whenever we're trying to negotiate something. So with that Pluto energy and Aquarius has to do with the future, and the fifth house is very connected to our children. It's very connected to our romance. It's very connected to our monetizable talents, right? But that Pluto energy having to do with like money for the future, retirement, da da da. And when it's in opposition to that Mercury retrograde, you may be trying to navigate some sort of strategy and plan having to do with making sure that you have enough money for the future, for your retirement, or to get married, depending on where you are in your life. But it's very like a future-based kind of energy. I hope that makes sense to you. But again, the oppositions, I don't feel like these are like horrible at all. It's almost like the tension that's necessary to actually, catapult something forward in a really nice way. But the main thing here is that the outer planets are beautifully aligned. So whatever is going to be shifting, I this is exactly where you're supposed to be going. Very, very protected. Very, very protected. I love it. Um, is there anything else I wanted to speak to you guys about? I'm going to be doing a separate video on the other energies for the month of July, but I did want to speak about these. The Jupiter and Venus, so, so good for property, real estate. Like if you're selling your house, yeah, I mean, great for that, great for moving, great for putting a bid in, great for anything having to do with that. Excellent for moving somebody in, great even if somebody wants to move out, great for making any sort of changes in your home, anything like that. Oh, so good. So, so good. Um, really nice there. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, it's a really nice energy. And do it now before Saturn. Well, Saturn and Neptune aren't ever even going to be, they're not even ever going to be, I mean, not in this cycle, squaring, because they're slower movers. They're not going to be squaring this Venus and Jupiter. They're just going to keep moving, and then it's going to go into a deeper trine. So nice energy here, guys. Honestly, I really like it. So that's what I have for you guys for this very, very special transit. I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye. Hey, Taurus. So I'm going to go right into shared screen, and I want to open up your chart to show you. It's just a lot easier if you can actually see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so I have it queued it up to August 11th. I love this day. I love the middle of August. I want to focus on this very important um, configuration. Let's just call it a configuration. It's just this planetary alignment where we have Pluto, we have Saturn, we have Uranus, we have Neptune, all beautifully aligned. Again, this has not happened since 1844. Way more profound than the inner planets, which of course are Venus, Mars, Mercury, and Jupiter, where they're important, but they're more connected to our day to day, our moods, things like that. Whereas these outer planets are a lot more life-changing. And so that's important, but there are also some other things that I wanted to speak about. And look, I just want to say before going into this video that things have been very unstable, right? We know that they've been pretty tricky, right? Um, but now things are finally settling in, right? They're going to start to settle in and they're going to go in a different direction because it was in July where Uranus finally got the heck out of your sign and is in Gemini. We'll be in Gemini for, 7, 8 years. So that's finally in. So now we have the complete configuration. So this is going to equate to being huge changes in society and politics. This is like a very grand scale kind of thing. Because again, this is happening in our sky. So we're all going to be feeling this, okay? Now for you guys, let's just start with Pluto. So Pluto is at 2 degrees. It's retrograde right now. We've been talking about what the retrograde means. So I don't want to overspeak that. But again, it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is very connected to the future. So you're very much thinking about your future as it's retrograde. It's very internalized. having to do with your career, your public reputation, your standing in the world, the long-term goals. There could be changes going on in the life of your mom if your mom is still with you, you know. So that's that Pluto energy. Pluto, when Pluto's retrograde, though, he's very controlling, right? So wanting to have this kind of command, right, over over these situations in your life, right? But now checking out Pluto, right? We go two houses over, go into your 12th house. That's called a sextile. So you're going to see that Saturn and Neptune are both at 1 degree. They're both retrograde in the 12th house of endings and beginnings. This is what's behind the veil, what's behind things. We feel like we have a very hard time accessing things that are in the 12th house, where we know they're there, but it can be very challenging for us to access it. But this is the thing. Pluto is like the zodiac like digger, right? He just like think about like one of those big like tiller things, right? With like spikes where as he moves very slow, right? He was 20 years at a time. Well, between 12 and 20 years. And he'll move and he'll just dig up the past and he'll dig up whatever it is that you're trying to keep down there. He's just gonna like come up, but he's doing it in the most gentle, loving way because he wants that 10th house, those long-term plans, that career situation, that situation that's going on with your mother. He wants it to be beneficial for you, right? So it's about really, he's going to be pushing you to get very real about your money. Because Uranus is involved in this as well in the second house of your money, your sense of self, your self-esteem. But this is also very connected for many of you to health and getting very realistic about something that you might need to pull back on that's not very good for your health, figuring out how can you improve your sense of self and self-esteem and whatever that means for you. But to have it sextiling, because a lot of times, guys, listen, Saturn in the 12th house, it could be really, oh, Saturn's so special. I know a lot of people don't like him. He's like, oh, the great malefic. You know, he's so, maybe it's because of Capricorn rising and he rules my chart. I don't think he's that scary if you're willing to do the work and put in the energy. But when he transits the 12th house, he's very protective, right? So as we're trying to figure our stuff out and think, oh, why do I do that? Why does this happen? Whatever. He's going to reveal a layer at a time because he's very cognizant of the fact when he's in the 12th house, because the 12th house is where our subconscious hangs out. He wants to deliver messages to you very responsibly. He doesn't want to give you more than you can handle in a moment, right? This is the thing. And that could be a little challenging where it's like, I want to do better, I want to be better, but I can't see it. You know, it's that kind of thing, right? Suddenly I can't see it. But Neptune is there, and Neptune is very exalted in the 12th house because that's where he lives, right? That's his home. So he's in this space. He's all about dreams. He will sleep. He rules our fantasies and desire and what it is that we really want. He also rules creativity. Now, let me break this into a couple of things. Saturn conjunct Neptune in the 12th house in Aries can have you busting out into a new area where you're utilizing your artistic ability really well, or you're breaking into something that has to do with working behind the scenes. With that Pluto energy in the 10th house of career mixed in with this beautifully exalted energy here, for you to be getting into anything where you're kind of the behind the scenes, either artistic person, ideas person, anything like that. Excellent. This is fantastic for those of you who are looking to become a nurse, who are looking to even get into any kind of business. It's very, very good in that way, right? Having to do with that element. But it also has you wanting to really view yourself differently through a very different lens. Right now, with that Uranus in the second house, which rules food, it rules our mouth, it rules anything that we put in our mouth, and the 12th house is where addiction hangs out. So I will say that it's like for you to have that Pluto manifestation of the kind of future that you want, it does look like something needs to be looked at having to do with your health. Taking better care, maybe eating less sugar, whatever it is, less carbs, maybe drinking less, doing whatever less. Just balancing out what it is that you ingest is really going to be something that's going to benefit you exponentially. I do want to say that. But also anything that is like 12th house, Aries energy could be very, very good for you. Remember, Aries is the emperor in tarot, so it's very much about having agency over life. So Aries can, even though Aries does not rule entrepreneurial energy per se, but it rules like managerial energy. So anything where you would be like a behind the scenes managing something, very, very nice in this space. Now, let's talk about Uranus. Uranus and Gemini in the second house, sudden reversals, huge shifts, huge changes, having to do with your money, the money in your bank account. Uranus can also bring, again, now I do want to just say, watching the health, because Uranus naturally rules the 11th house, which is where your Pisces energy is, and that's where the North Node is transiting now. And sometimes that can manifest as some sort of illness manifesting. You also have IG in there, very connected to the medical realm of our chart as well. It's in the sign of Gemini, which is, connected to our hands, our arms, our lungs. So, also the way that we think, our mind, so there could be some sudden reversals there. The second house is also very connected to our stability, us feeling stable, meaning like legit stable, like I have enough money, I have enough food, I'm like good where I live, looking at the possessions and all of that stuff. So Uranus, the wild child of the zodiac, again, is very thinking about the future, revolutionary change, could be sudden reversals, could be amazing, could be a little tricky. Nobody could really tell. Really, I mean, it is conjunct Sedna here. And, the Sedna energy could be very feeling controlled by the man, feeling controlled by society, feeling controlled by what must be, when it comes to your future. And I don't want you to be mad at that, right? Because it's this recognition where it's like, you're going to be pushed into this space where, okay, I have to accept that I'm going to be working with exactly what I have right now. And this is not that bad a thing, right? New things are going to be happening, and there's no question, obviously, right? But it's about taking a very realistic perspective with everything, which could be so, so beautiful for you guys. Now, at the same time, we do have Jupiter and Venus in the third house. They're like sitting on each other's lap. Yeah, yes, it's within a couple of degrees of Hades and Kronos as well. Like these are all kind of sitting together here. But those are a little more psychological, in that third house, thinking like you're a little, you could be thinking like, oh, maybe I'm like a little alone. I don't feel very understood in a particular situation. Remember Kronos is Saturn's father, Again, this idea of feeling controlled by something. You could feel very controlled by, a family situation because it's in the sign of Cancer. You could feel very controlled by something, right? Having to do with a sibling situation. Feeling very controlled by an extended family situation or even a friendship situation. But this is the thing. Jupiter could not possibly be more exalted than in the sign of Cancer. Okay. I mean, this is amazing. And it's conjuncting Venus. So I'm looking at this saying, okay, you know what? We can't be mad at this. Yes, this is also squaring. We go 1, 2, 3. It is, having to do with house placement to the house that Mars is in. So there might be some sort of like, tricky energy when it comes to dealing with a sibling or extended family situation because of the square having to do with house placements only. An irritation kind of having that has to be spoken about. Now, this is the thing. Pluto is going to be opposing Mercury as well, right? So you say, an opposition, right? That's stress. Now, I want you to think about it as two people sitting across the table from each other saying, we're not leaving the table until we figure out a solution to this. Now, Pluto is in the 10th house, manifestation of mother energy, career, long-term goals, public reputation, all that stuff that I mentioned. And that Mercury in Leo having to do with your joy and what it is that you really want to do, having to do with the business, having to do with children, having to do with the romance situation. There can be some sort of oppositional energy that must be worked out. But now Mercury is coming out of retrograde on August 10th, so the day before. And now he's not going to be out of that shadow, but at least the conversations are going to be able to be had, especially because it's sextiling this Uranus energy. Beautiful. Sitting down and having the conversation about money, about possessions, about how you feel in a situation, about yourself. Having that conversation is very, very important, especially if it has to do with a sibling, extended family member, an old friend. Beautiful, beautiful energy there, right? Is there anything else that I wanted to say? I think that's about it, like the main things. I'll speak more when I'm going to do another video on the month of August, but I did want to separate this particular planetary alignment out for you guys. So I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Gemini, I hope you guys are doing great. So I'm going to go into shared screen and open up the wheel for you so we could take a look at this together. Such an exciting alignment, right? Now, when we're talking about the outer planets, life-changing, those inner planets again, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Mars, those are more about our everyday and how we're feeling about things. They're important, but when we're talking about these outer, I mean, this is just going to be changes to society, to politics, just to the general landscape out there. But very, 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 very supportive. And we have a couple of oppositions that we're going to talk about as well. But the positionings of these, let's start with Pluto, and you're going to see that even the oppositions are blessed, right? I mean, very blessed time period, particularly the middle of August. So you do have Pluto, it's retrograde right now, in the sign of Aquarius in the ninth house, having to do with higher education, higher mindedness, politics, religion, organized or otherwise, the manifestation of father energy, very connected to the idea of writing, publishing, marketing, editing, getting something out there to the world, right? It's foreign land, it's foreign travel, it's societal norms, societal expectations, as well as law, legalities, local governance. It's a big one, right? Pluto's a very controlling energy, and in the sign of Aquarius, it's very future oriented, right? Thinking about the future. Right. So here it is in this sextile, very high in your chart, Gem. Look how high it is. See these lower houses, very connected to the personal houses, right? This is very connected to other, out there, right? So here we have this beautiful sextile. 11th house has to do with the masses. It has to do with the future, goals and gains, retirement, having enough money for that thing, for the future, having the money to have the child, having the money to buy the house, having the money to retire, to do whatever that thing is, right? Very connected. Now, because it's connecting to Saturn, Saturn is well, among other things, very connected to our career, our public reputation, our long-term goals, our standing in the world. And so this change is happening as a result of that ninth house, as a result of our views changing, our belief system in any of the areas that I mentioned, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it's being able to change an approach or a strategy having to do with some sort of project that you want to get out there to the world, right? Now, it is working with Neptune, which is all about making our dreams come true. Neptune is very ethereal, very connected to our fantasies, our deepest desires. Neptune does rule sleep as well. Neptune does also rule, I have to just say, he also does rule the other side of it, which is self-sabotaging behavior, addiction, and it could also be disease and disease that we don't quite see. But Saturn there in that 11th house of advances in science and medicine, if anything does come up having to do with health, because it can, you do have Uranus in the first house, right? It can, something can pop up. beautiful energy for solutions, beautiful energy for you to be able to get in front of some sort of medical situation. So I don't really want to make it about the medical thing. I do want to just acknowledge that because some of you may be dealing with that, okay? But going back to this Pluto sextiling these here, Saturn is very responsible. And Neptune is very much about our deepest desires. So being responsible, having to do with our deepest desires, and you are trying to figure stuff out right now, Gemini. Holy cow, because all these guys are retrograde. So it's very interesting. That doesn't mean it's not it's still not, it's not positive. It's still very positive. But there is this coming together slowly, and you're slowly figuring things out. Things are slowly coming to you in a very different way. See, what you thought in your mind's eye was going to be the right thing for your future, you're realizing that it wasn't supposed to happen that way. Now this is a different way that things are going to happen, and it's actually going to be fine. I hope that makes sense to you, right? Now, Saturn in that Neptune energy in the 11th house as well. Some of you may be in a space where, because the 11th house is ruled by Uranus, very connected to technology as well. So you could be working in something that's connected to technology. Neptune rules tarot and Reiki and meditation, anything like that. So some of you may be starting brand new Aries, some sort of work, Saturn, having to do with like tarot, Reiki, meditation, anything having to do with like crystal therapy, anything like that. Yoga is even very considered a very Neptunian energy, in that 11th house, right, dealing with the masses. So doing something online for that could be a very, very, very nice energy for you. Now, if you notice here, this Saturn is opposing Mars, right? And when we're talking about oppositions, I want you to think about two people sitting across each other at a table and saying, we're not leaving here until we figure this out. Now, that Saturn energy with Neptune we're talking about your future. It's the 11th house, and the 5th house is your children. It has to do with monetizable talent, your joy, what it is that you really want. It's your ability to take risks on things. It's like it was gambling, right? Taking a risk, taking a chance, is very connected to romance as well. So there's going to have to be some very important but fated conversation that's going to be going on here. And I know that that's what's going to be going on because Pluto will be direct in the 3rd house of communication, but it's going to be sextiling this Mars. It's going to be opposing this Pluto energy. So we have Mars is opposing Saturn and Mercury is opposing Pluto. You are not leaving that table until everyone is made to feel like they were heard and there is some sort of solution that's very connected to the future and what changes need to be made. There could be a lot of conversations about Leo type of energy. So if it's not children and if it's not the romance in your relationship and the joy and happiness or about a business, it's literally just like, how can we make our life better? How can we be happier? How can we feel like we're enjoying life more? Right? Even if it's just these little micro changes, right? Such an important, beautifully supported energy. So even though there are a couple of oppositions, I'm not mad at them, okay? So we have that Pluto sextile. Now we also have this Pluto is trining Uranus, and Uranus again is in this 1st house. Now I'm going to tell you what's interesting. Uranus is very much about the future, right? And it's within a 1-degree conjunction of Sedna. So you're feeling actually very controlled by the idea, Gemini, of your future, right? That Gemini energy, it's like your mental realm. Uranus is like, what's the future going to be like? Oh my God. And Sedna is, you gotta be careful with Sedna because Sedna feels very controlled by an idea or an ideology, right? Sedna is going to be pushing you. You're going to feel very worried about perhaps a health situation, perhaps just your ability to be stable in life, right? And the reason I'm saying that, Gemini, is because we do have Venus and Jupiter conjunct in your 2nd house of money. Jupiter could not be more exalted than in the sign of Cancer. So beautiful. And it's conjunct Neptune. Lovely. But on the other side, you're going to see who's here. Hades next to him. Kronos, Saturn's dad, right? So it's like this control that's making you feel kind of alone, kind of scared. Even if everything out in the 3D is like pretty okay right now, there is this thing that's just going away, going on in your mind when you're thinking about your emotional stability. You're thinking about the future of where you're going to live. You're thinking about your money. You're thinking about your stability. You're thinking about all these things. I want to throw this in there because I know a lot of interpretations are just going to be woohoo, Jupiter and Venus in the second house. You're in the money, and that may be, but there's something underneath it that's just this something where you're afraid of being alone, of not being supported enough. It's this thing that's like right there. But Jupiter and Venus together are beautiful for encouraging a positive sense of self, increasing your self-esteem. Really is, especially between you and a significant other or you and some sort of financial situation, being able to see something differently, but and having faith in it though, Jem. Like this is where we're human beings. We have choice. We could choose to look at the glass half full, or we can choose to look at it half empty, right? The choice really is ours. Because when we're talking about this Hades and Chronos, it's a lot more metaphorical, it's a lot more psychological. And a lot of it is more based in fear than in reality. Or it might be based in some past experience that you're sort of projecting onto the current situation, if that makes sense, right? So just a couple of things. Yeah, I just want you to have a mental mind's eye, take a note if you start to feel that way. But Jupiter and Venus can be very, very good, having to do with money, having to do with some sort of health situation as well. I do want to say that, the second houses rule our weight, and whenever Jupiter is in the second house, we have to be careful because there could be an easy tendency to gain weight. And, Cancer naturally lives in the fourth house. That's where Virgo is, and Virgo does well health. So it could be some sort of health situation that you feel like is manifesting as some sort of weight gain. But I truly, truly, truly don't want you to sweat it because this is something that's just right. It's very much a for now kind of thing. That Venus in there is very much helping to alleviate that because Venus is so exalted in the second house, because Venus rules the second house, right? Taurus is the landlord there and Venus rules. So we have two very exalted energies kind of hugging each other at that 14 degrees. And so, 14 equates in numerology to a five, and a five, a lot of, yeah, on the one hand, it could be feeling very conflicted about something, but it's also an energy that indicates things are not as bad as you think, right? They're just not as bad as you think. And I know that could be difficult to digest if we're in the throes of something, right? But things are a lot better than you think. So I really like this energy. I love these sort of dipping down and then with that Uranus energy in the first house, because this trio together in this very public part of your chart is going to equate to your journey, your first house experience, your path being very different than what it is right now, but very, very nice energy. Now, that fifth house also has to do with any sort of, I said before, monetizable talents, anything having to do with creativity. And with that Mars in there, Mars gives you the energy to get something done. So Mars is very, very positive in the fifth house when it comes to being able to roll your sleeves up and do the work for that business, for that project, for that creative, whatever it is that you want to get out there. Really, really good energy. Okay. You just have to be a little patient because things are rolling out. Okay. So remember, with that Saturn in the 11th house, slow and steady wins the race. Things might not happen as quickly as you want, not exactly as in the way that you want, but it's still going to be entirely positive. Okay, my friends. So I hope that was helpful in some way. I am going to be doing more interpreting of the month of August in another video, but I wanted to give this its own space because it's that special and that important. Okay, my friends, until next time, you take care. Bye-bye. Cancer, I hope you guys are doing great. So I'm going to go right into shared screen so you can see what I'm talking about. in the wheel. So, such a cool, life-changing planetary alignment kind of thing. And it really is. You're going to notice. It's funny. We might not notice day to day, but then when we sit and we look back on like a month, the past 2 months, the past 3 months, we see the change. And this is these outer planets and the way that they're going to be speaking to each other is really going to be changing the way society, the affect of society, politics. It's just going to be changing a huge, huge landscape, right? And that's always the case with the outer planets, right? Saturn, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, right? The inner planets, the Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, they're important. They're more connected to our daily experience, very connected to our moods and how it is that we're feeling on a more local level. But the larger, but then we get past it and we live our life, right? So, these smaller transits, but these outer planets, they move slow. They're very slow moving. So, what I'm going to be discussing is going to be hanging out for a while. Okay. Now, the last of those big four finally made its change. And of course, that would be Uranus going into Gemini in the month of July. But now we're like, okay, the biggest instability has sort of happened thus far, and now we're set up for a period of like, okay, let's figure this out. So we have Pluto here. I want you to follow me. Pluto in the eighth house. It's 2 degrees. It's sextiling, which means two houses away in this same low degree, right? We pay attention to anything that's pretty much within 10 degrees of each other, so it's only 1 degree difference here. So Pluto is sextiling both Saturn and Neptune, and it's trining Uranus in your 12th house. So that's beautiful. So let's talk about that first. We have a couple of oppositions, but I'm not mad at them, and we're going to talk about it. Pluto is all about change and transformation. Now, if you've been watching me, I did a separate video on Pluto and all that it means. But just for the purposes of the explanation, Aquarius is the future, doing things different, changing things for the future. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, which is about sudden reversals, change and transformation, doing things out of the doing things differently for the intention of the future, advances in science, advances in medicine. There's been this change and transformation having to do with what it is, where it is that you're going. Now, what part of life is it impacting? The eighth house, right? So the eighth house is the area, particularly where this is going to be happening for you. And the eighth house has to do with shared resources. It has to do with investments, other people's money, the stock market, insurance payout, inheritance, debt, taxes. It's also through another lens, very connected to intimacy, very connected to absolute commitment. It's also the house where we find divorce. So it's absolute commitment to the point of marriage and then divorce, right? Because remember, it's change and transformation. Pluto's very exalted in the eighth house because he is the modern ruler of that eighth house, right? So very connected to this idea of the occult, right? Astrology, detective work, psychology, anything that considers and ponders the mysteries of life and the mysteries of death. That's all eighth house stuff, right? It's all eighth house. So in that space, it's a lot of real estate, a lot of speaking of real estate, it also covers mortgages. This is a lot of property to cover where there's going to be a lot of change and transformation. Now, it is a long transit. So, yes, all of these things could be happening for you over the next 20 years. But now you're in this space thinking about the future, shared resources. Many of you commitment, others of you might be thinking about ending something. You might be in the throes of trying to deal with debt, taxes, in the throes of dealing with some sort of exchange having to do with one of the areas that we talked about. But it's sextiling in the 10th house is Saturn and Neptune. 10th house has to do with your career, your public reputation, your standing in the world, as well as the manifestation of mother energy. Now, Saturn is very exalted in the 10th house. That's where he lives. Saturn does rule, again, career, reputation, very connected to the manifestation of mother energy. It does rule the skin, by the way. I want to throw that in there because Saturn is very strong in that house right now, and the 10th house does rule our skin. Um, it's very connected to our joints, you know, our skin, and it's in the sign of Aries, which is a very surface energy. And when we have Saturn, which is very restrictive, working with Neptune, which rules our dreams, our sleep, our fantasies, what it is that we'd really like, it also does, through another lens, rule self-sabotaging behavior and disease, right? So when we have those two together, I just want you to make sure that you're checking your skin. If you have an ache, a pain, or anything like that, you do want to make sure that you know, that you're getting it checked out. Any sort of issues like with the thigh or the hip, anything like that, you want to make sure that you're getting it checked out. I don't want to make it about a medical astrology or whatever, but just throwing that out there, right? Just as an aside. But for you guys, I do think is going to be very, very focused, honestly, in your career, your public reputation, your standing in the world. Now, some of you with that sextile to Pluto in the eighth, you may be seriously thinking about getting married, changing the status of a current marriage that you have. That could certainly be it. There could be consideration of doing something for work that's very connected to that eighth house, which would be anything having to do with accounting, other people's money. Um, Very connected to um, the idea of, when I say property and real estate, I mean more like, you know, investing, right? Do it not as like a real estate agent, but maybe like house flipping or something like that would be also indicated here. And that can end up being something that's quite beneficial for you. The sextile is absolutely beautiful here. Even though these energies are retrograde, I really like doing the research into any sort of advances, by the way, right? I mean, remember, Uranus is very, Aquarius is very out of the box, very different. And that eighth house is very connected to like the banking systems, very connected to, you know, I mentioned the stock market. So we really are talking like about crypto and Bitcoin and all of these things, you know, really making some huge strides. And you guys being in a very beautiful space of acceptance right now for this whole year for that. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. So good. So good. And why am I saying that? Well, hello. I mean, besides the fact that you have Jupiter in your first house, right? Especially for those of you who are Cancer rising, to a lesser degree, but still very strong for those of you who are Cancer sun. Jupiter is so exalted in Cancer, and it's right now. It's conjuncting, right? If you look here, it's at 13 degrees in Venus. It's conjunct Venus. Beautiful. So making some strategic moves because it is also working with Kronos and Hades. And these are very psychological. I don't want to get into the weeds of Hades, but Hades can make us feel psychologically alone, right? When it's like when you're thinking about your path and you think it's kind of like, oh, I feel the weight of the world on my shoulder, right? With Kronos, who's Saturn's dad, right? Well, so it's just like you could feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, kind of like underneath it all, but feeling very optimistic. At least I hope you're feeling optimistic, Cancer. You have a lot of reasons to feel so optimistic, having Jupiter in that energy for the year. Now, I don't know you, your chart. I don't know what's in your first house that Jupiter is also speaking to, and Venus, but I could just say as you know, the general energies really, really nice, having to do with the path that you're on. So, why is that going to be so beneficial for you? Because of this Pluto sextiling Saturn and Neptune. That is going to be, right? It's trining this Uranus energy, which is about sudden reversals, change and transformation in that 12th house. So what is the 12th house? It's the house of the subconscious, behind the scenes. It's being a very working behind the scenes as well. So you might do something where you're working behind the scenes. You might be doing something where you're working in the nursing profession or in the prison system or in a rehab system, any sort of large institution that helps support people. This could absolutely be a situation as well. Now, for some of you, this could also be because we have this Saturn and Neptune energy. Again, it's in the house, the manifestation of mother energy, but it's in the sign of Aries, which does represent like our physical self and the face that we sort of present to the world. And this Uranus energy is about sudden reversals. And it's in that 12th house of behind the scenes in the sign of Gemini. So being very, very effective at being like a behind the scenes manager, some sort of communicator, being at home and writing something. Remember, Uranus rules Aquarius. It's the eldest air energy. It's a very mature air, and air is very connected to writing in general. It's also very connected to technology, so doing anything in the realm of technology. The only thing that I want to say is we have to be careful that the 12th house, again, is the house of the hidden. It's behind the scenes. So doing something having to do with technology behind the scenes, you just want to make sure that you're being very careful. That's the only thing that I want to say, right? You want to make sure that all your passwords are protected and all of that good stuff that most of you probably know about, but I just want to say it for like good measure. Now that sudden reversal Uranus energy in the 12th house and the sign of Gemini could also have you getting in front of, on a different, through a totally different lens, any sort of anxiety or depression or any sort of challenges that you've been dealing with, any sort of addiction, finally getting in front of something like that, anything that's been, really challenging your hidden self, you know, um, kind of taking that by the horns and saying, I want to get in front of this. I don't want this to be a thing for me anymore. For some of you, it's like, I don't want to be so shy anymore, or I don't want to be so afraid of things anymore. I just want to change the way I think. I want to shift the way that I'm viewing something, right? Because it's in Gemini and you have the power to do that. So it's very, very cool energy. Now we do have the Saturn opposing Mars. Again, Saturn, career, Mars, in the fourth house, having to do with your home, property, real estate, your family. There's this opposition. And I don't want you to be too afraid of the opposition. I really, really don't, because also Mercury is opposing Pluto here. So we have this Mercury opposed Pluto and we have Saturn opposing Mars. And when we're talking about an opposition, God, I want you to think about this. You're at a table and two people are sitting across from each other saying, okay, we have to figure this out. We are not leaving until we figure it out. And the reason I'm saying this to everybody, a lot of people are going to be having some very fated conversations at this particular time, because this Mercury is sextiling Uranus and is trining Saturn in Neptune. So whatever conversations you're having about money, about children, about romantic situations, about finances, because it's Leo and it's that second house energy combined. When it comes to talking and thinking about the future, beautiful alignments. Now, Mercury is not going to be staying put. Mercury is a personal planet, it's an inner planet. But for the month of August, he's going to be hanging in that space for mid-August. So if you have to have those important conversations, have them at that point. Any sort of important conversation that's going to be going on. Now, this Mercury energy opposing Pluto, right? This change and transformation, there could be some tension within you, very connected to finances, where it's like your dreams and your ideas maybe aren't matching your bank account, and you're trying to strategize. Strategize, Cancer. It's going to work in your favor. You have Pluto in there, so Pluto really does want you to take control of whatever's going on in that eighth house, right? Which does rule debt. It rules taxes. It rules other people, other people's money, when it comes to like shared resources, shared things, right? So I really do think that for a lot of you, there's going to be a lot of focus on the ability to make more money, to feel more confident, having to do with what it is that you're doing. And strategizing your finances a lot differently is something that could certainly be very beneficial for you at this time. So I'll speak more deeply about the other energies that have been going on in the month of August when I do my next video, but I wanted to splice this particular very nice transit out. I hope it was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Leo, hope you guys are doing great. I'm going to open up the wheel and be able to show you what I'm talking about having to do with these four outer planets, which are beautifully aligned. And this is not to say that the inner planets like Venus, Mars, Mercury, and Jupiter aren't important. It's just that they deal more with our day-to-day, having to do with our emotions and our moods. These larger outer planets, which are not going anywhere soon, right? This alignment is going to be here for a while now. Finally, Uranus is in Gemini, so it's sort of completed this beautiful alignment, which I'm going to explain to you. It hasn't been like this since 1844. We all feel the change that's been going on, right? Obviously, but this situation is going to be recalibrating things having to do with society, having to do with politics, having to do with the landscape inside which we're all living in a very profound way. And we're going to be feeling it very profoundly again over the next year. But let's take a look at what it means for you. Again, this is a general reading. I don't know what is going on in your personal birth chart, how this would be connecting, but let's talk about Pluto at 2 degrees in the seventh house. I did a separate video on Pluto. You guys could check it out. Pluto is retrograde, meaning there's a lot of control, right? There's very strong desire for control and this very strong desire to not feel controlled, right? And when we're talking about the seventh house, it's about marriage, it's bosses, any sort of contract, literal or metaphorical. Seventh house also is very connected to our doctors. It's also our energetic output at work. And when it's in the sign of Aquarius, which has to do with goals and gains, we may be thinking about our energetic output at work. We may be considering our marital status. We may be looking at our employment, whatever having to do with the future, having to do with our goals and gains. I'm really trying to imagine where it is that we see our life going, right? Now, it is opposing, I just want to kind of get this out of the way because we do have two oppositions going on. It is opposing Mercury in Leo in the first house. I don't want you to be upset with this. We have this opposition. We also have Saturn opposing Mars. This is like, in the astrology community, a lot of people get their hair on fire for a lot of like things, right? No big deal, people. It's like we're sitting across the table from each other, right? That's an opposition. Sitting across the table from each other, and we're saying, we are not going to leave here until we have this figured out. This one, anyway. And a lot of it does have to do with the fact that Mercury is sextiling Uranus in that 11th house. So when you're sitting down and you're thinking about or discussing with a significant other or a boss or bosses or even just yourself, trying to figure out where do I go now? What do I want to do? Everything is going to be looked at through a very particular lens having to do with the future, knowing that things are going to be different and just figuring out what that new normal is kind of going to look like, right? So I just kind of want to say that in a nutshell. But going back to this alignment, we have Pluto again in the seventh house, and then we have Saturn and Neptune conjuncting at 1 degree in the ninth house. So sextiles are very, very supportive energies. Saturn is about responsibility, long-term plans. It's very connected to, now you have it in the ninth house, which is the house that manifests father energy, but you also have Saturn. Saturn is the landlord of the 10th house, which would be the manifestation of mother energy. So this is just something that I want you to keep in mind right now. It's very interesting. Well, I'll come back to that empty 10th house. No house is empty, but you don't have anything transiting in there in this mid-August. But let's talk about this Saturn energy, right? Saturn in the ninth house, work, responsibility, restriction and delay, yes, but slow and steady wins the race. Neptune is very connected to creativity, creative projects, our dreams, desires, foreign land, foreign travel, importing and exporting, higher education, higher mindedness, law, legalities, local governance, politics, right? Religion, organized or otherwise, right? It's a very important house. It's the house of truth. It's the house where God speaks to us, right? So we have this sextiling with Pluto, which is this. So many of you may be really working on your marriage, really trying to make some sort of situation work at work. Some of you may be realizing you want to make some changes that's more in alignment with your truth, when it comes to what it is that you do on the day to day. Some of the ninth house is also very connected to writing, publishing, marketing, advertising, and it is in that manifestation of the ninth house. So, there could be some sort of positive experience going on with father energy there as well. Um, there could be some sort of manifestation having to do with the health situation of dad as well. But because of this beautiful alignment, everything's going to be okay. I don't want you to worry about it. And it is trining that Uranus energy in the 11th of goals and gains in your future, right? Uranus is so exalted in the 11th house, Leo, right? That's where he lives, that's his abode. So it's about sudden reversals when it comes to goals and gains. You could be getting very involved in technology, doing something online, something that reaches the masses. There could be some sort of you're somehow involved in some sort of medical advancement, right? Meaning you could be dealing with something having to do, like, for example, a health situation that you have going on where you're utilizing some sort of advances in medicine, advances in science, something like that. Very exalted kind of energy there. And I'm saying that particularly because we also do have Hygeia in there, which is the asteroid of health. Um, and it's in the third house. In the third house, you have Libra. So it could be something connected to some sort of maternal energy, but it can also be anything connected to the blood, really, too. I don't want to make it about the medical, but when I see these things, I like to just sort of mention them. But we have this beautiful trine. We have this beautiful sextile, right? And this is very much approaching the more public part of your life, right? We have like houses 1 through 6 are very private. It's like our inner world. All of this beautiful alignment is happening in the more of like the public sector, right? So it's like your marriage and how you're known and your truth and kind of getting out there. And I just I can't help but interpret this as something finally happening for you, Leo. Do you know what I'm saying? Something finally coming together that you've been trying to manifest for yourself. It's like maybe you've been doing the work here, there, here, there. You've been plugging away, you've been trying to make something, happen, and it's finally going to start to happen. Now, I have mentioned before, Uranus is the wild child of the zodiac, just is, okay? Now, when we have Uranus in Gemini, which rules communications, in its own house, again, doing something where you are dealing with the masses or you're dealing with people who are very different than you. Learning technology, doing something very different in that way, getting yourself out there, that could be great. But a sudden reversal could also be, and Gemini is very connected to siblings and extended family members, your neighborhood, your neighbors. There could be a sudden reversal that challenges that energy as well. I just need to give all of the interpretations because while Uranus can be absolutely positive, we have to understand what it can mean on the other side. Potentially, it's a long transit, it's over 7 years. It just is, right? So the sudden reversal having to do with, again, in the sign of Gemini, having to do with siblings, extended family, your neighborhood, your neighbors, right? Something like that. So, very connected, and it's opposing the fifth house, with that Sagittarius energy, which does indicate like the law, legalities, local governance, foreign entities, anything like that. So there can be some sort of like, opposition there having to do with this change and transformation. I don't see that being a really big thing for a lot of people, but again, I do want to just mention it. Now, I want to talk about Jupiter and Venus being conjunct in the 12th house. The 12th house is the subconscious, it's behind the scenes, it's behind the veil, it's where we're sleeping, it's where we're in utero. Now, Jupiter, a quite literal interpretation of this would be Jupiter conjunct Venus in there in the sign of Cancer is pregnancy. Okay. So you may be dealing with a pregnancy. You may be in the cultivating pregnancy stages of something as well. And what I mean by that is some of you may be literally expecting a child, Leo, but others of you may be in the beginning stages of thinking about opening up your own business. trying to get something going in that way, right? Because Uranus in the 11th house, it's a money house. It's money for the future. It's having money for retirement. It's having money to have that baby. It's money to buy that house, to manifest that situation. So very, very beautiful energy for manifesting something behind the scenes. This is very good for writing something behind the scenes, advancing something behind the scenes. It's not the point of reveal yet, though. That's going to be coming up later in the year. I feel like for a lot of you, this is going to be a year of planning, right? This is going to be a year of planning because then, guys, right, what's going to happen in June of 2026? That Jupiter energy that's in the 12th house, that's going to be going into your first house. So getting it ready now. And I feel like I've been talking to you guys about this. This is the season to be getting things ready. Beautiful, beautiful energy there. Now, don't be bummed out if you're feeling less than stellar about um, something about the future. I'm not saying that you don't feel excited, but there you might be like low key, maybe not so low key, feeling a little nervous, feeling a little vulnerable, not very emotionally secure. And the reason for that is because Jupiter does expand whatever it's in, and very exalted in the sign of Cancer, extremely exalted. However, Jupiter does expand whatever it's in. And Cancer is a very vulnerable energy because it's ruled by the moon. And it's where we're dealing with, because it's conjuncting Hades and Kronos as well. Kronos is Saturn's dad. Hades is about like this silent suffering and strife and feeling very alone. It's very psychological, though. It's very psychological. So it's like in your moments alone behind the scenes, there's something that you're going through right now, Leo, that you're manifesting, and it's like you're very excited about it, but you're also kind of feeling alone in the process of it. I don't want you to sweat it, right? You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to say. If something is manifesting that's really beautiful in your life, let it happen. Let it roll out. This is a weird season because things are happening for you in a very, very nice way. But in the process, in your private moments, you're feeling this kind of like alone in a crowded room kind of thing. Now, it could have to do with your marriage, right? And I'm only saying that, or it could have to do with the way that your boss is dealing with you, because we do have this Mercury opposition to Pluto in the seventh house, right? So there is this change and this transformation that's going on in that seventh house area, having to do with your marriage, having to do with your work environment. There is this change. But while you're going through the change, you may be feeling a little alone. You also may be feeling a little trepidatious about actually speaking your mind, right, to the fullest extent about how it is that you feel, having to do with what's going on. And I don't want you to actually hold it in. If anything, please, please, please have the conversation mid-August, please, Leo, because looky here. That Mercury energy is sextiling Uranus in the 11th house. It's also trining Saturn and Neptune. So sitting down and having that conversation about your truth, how it is that you're feeling, having the conversation about the future. Having that open conversation. Mercury will be out of retrograde on August 10th, right? He's not going to be out of the post shadow. That's okay. Have the conversations in the middle of August. It's a beautiful time to have the conversations, all right? Yeah, I mean, it really does look good. This public higher part of your chart, where you're going, how are you going to be considered? Geez, I mean, it's just moon energy and Pisces in the eighth house. I mean, yes, nice energy having to do with working on feeling a lot more secure in your life, solidifying something. Um, but the thing is this, the key to making something more peaceful and prosperous for yourself as you move forward, it is going to require negotiation. Because Saturn and Neptune, they are sextiling Pluto, and they are sextiling, the Uranian energy for sure, beautiful, but it's in the house of negotiating. So you just want to make sure that you're negotiating these situations having to do with your deepest relationships, having to do with sibling energy, that you're being very truthful, that you're being very honest about how you feel about things and being very open to listening to other people as well. But you're entering a really nice season. Really nice. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Virgo, hope you guys are doing great. I'm going to go into shared screen so I could show you. All right. I mean, this is a really cool planetary alignment with the four outer planets. We have Pluto, we have Uranus, we have Neptune, we have Saturn. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. Now that Uranus is in Gemini, everything is sort of like lined up. We also have Venus conjuncting Jupiter in there. Beautiful energy, couple of oppositions, nothing to sweat. I'm just going to kind of, alleviate any sort of energies that you might be concerned about having to do with the oppositions. But let's get right into it. So these outer planets are very important because they do indicate actual life changes, whereas the inner planets, when we're talking about Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Mars, those are more connected to our day-to-day manifestations, our emotions. They're important, but like we do the transit and we get over it and everything's fine and it's kind of easy peasy and quick, even if it's stressful in the moment. It's these larger ones, these outer planets, and the way that they're aligning. Finally, it's going to start to bring some calm to the situations that have been going on, right? Everything's been absolutely flipping bananas. So when we have these energies, things, the whole affect of the societal landscape having to do with politics, all of these things are just going to start to be quelled, right? And we're absolutely like in this season of things being revealed, and those revelations are going to be settling in, and there's just going to be a lot more clarity, just generally speaking. But for you guys, let's take a look. We have this Pluto energy in the sixth house. Been doing a lot of speaking about Pluto, but just to reiterate for the purposes of the video, Pluto is about change and transformation, especially when he's retrograde. We do not want to feel controlled by anything in that part of our life. And what part of your life is the sixth house? It has to do with health. It has to do with your daily work environment. It has to do with your daily responsibilities. So it's like not wanting to feel totally controlled by these things, right? I'm not going to say it's a little bit of like a get me out of here energy because you're so ready for something new, so ready for something different, right? But Pluto is about change and transformation. Now, how can this manifest for you? A new job, some sort of new turn of events having to do with your health. But this is the thing, and I don't want to make this about a medical astrology thing. It is in the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius does rule changes and advances in science, in medication, in approaches to medicine, approaches to treatment, right? It's also very connected to technology. So some of you may be doing a lot more hands-on tech work having to do with the daily environment. Some of you may be dealing with some sort of medical professionals having to do with a medical situation that you have going on, right? It depends on other things in your chart, but whatever it is within 10 degrees of the vertex. So something is very faded that's going on here. And I think it's going to be a good thing for you because it is sextiling Saturn and Neptune. So we have this planet number one, Pluto. Then we have planet number two, outer planet number two, Saturn, outer planet number three, Neptune, outer planet number four, Uranus. Pluto is in a trine with Uranus, is in a sextile to Saturn and Neptune. Saturn and Neptune in the eighth house. So again, I've been talking about this as well, but again, let's just pull it together. Saturn is very restrictive. He's very much about delay. He's very responsible. And the eighth house has to do with other people's money. It has to do with taxes and debt and inheritance, insurance payout. It has to do with astrology and psychology. It has to do with any sort of detective work, things that have been hidden that need to be revealed, right? Because Neptune does rule the subconscious. So Saturn conjuncting Neptune in the eighth house has us doing a lot of going over things in our mind, right? If we're working it right. And so that Neptune energy can be a tricky one, right? Because he rules our dreams and our desires and our fantasies. And the eighth house does have to do with intimacy, shared resources. It has to do with, again, other people's money. So there could be this, you want to just make sure that you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket when it comes to some sort of payout, whether it's an insurance payout or whether it's an inheritance or anything like that, because we do have Saturn in there, and Saturn can be very restrictive. So Saturn really, in this space with Neptune, could be very connected to work. So especially if you're doing anything that's very eighth house, anything that's connected to working near water, close to water, right? Because the eighth house is where Scorpio lives. It's a very water energy. But anything working in the field of psychology, the field of astrology, or the occult sciences, anything having to do with like detective work, anything like that, anything having to do with refurbishing as well. This is a very exalted position for you guys, no kidding, with this Pluto sextile. Fantastic, fantastic for that. Um, Also, if you do anything that's like an actuary, or where you're trying to find the mistakes behind the scenes, having to do with anything, really, really nice energy there as well. Now, Saturn is the ruler of the 10th house, the mono rule of the 10th house, and which is the manifestation of mother energy. And Neptune also does rule some sort of like some sort of illness, right? Some sort of situation there. And we have the eighth house having to do with inheritance. So when like there might be some sort of situation going on where there's some sort of family like inheritance kind of situation that's sextiling you through the sixth house, and sextiling you in this Uranian energy in the 10th house in Gemini, having to do with siblings. So there can be some sort of positive, not that there's any sort of positive manifestation if there's anything going on with mom's health. We don't want that, right? But this can certainly be a manifestation that I just have to mention. I'm just going to mention that, right? Because Uranus in the 10th house, it could be sudden reversals. We never really quite know where he stands. But for you guys, I feel like a lot of you are also going to be primarily manifesting this as some sort of tweak in your career. So with this Pluto energy in the sixth, you might be getting some sort of different job offer, or working to do something very different. So it could be doing something having to do with technology, doing something where you're connecting with the masses. But there is some sort of like change in your responsibility. And with that eighth house, it could be connected again to other people's money, all of the areas that I did mention. But that eighth house is where Pluto lives. This idea of change and transformation having to do with the path that you're on, because it's in the sign of Aries, and it's trining this Uranian energy, which in the 10th house is your long-term plans, where it is that you're going. So Virgo, I have to tell you, if we look at this between the 6th house and the 10th house, these energies going on, your path is absolutely being tweaked in another direction when it comes to not only your career, but it's also the general trajectory of your path. Now, you will be dealing with some health issues along the way. That's going to happen. But I don't want that to dampen the situation that a very positive manifestation is actually turning for you in your life as well. Now, we do have a beautiful conjunction of Jupiter and Venus in Cancer. First of all, Jupiter in Cancer, so exalted, and it's conjuncting Venus. Beautiful. 11th house, your goals and gains having to do, it's in Cancer, so it might be connected to like siblings, some sort of situation there, right? Very nice energy. However, and I have to just say this, it is also within 1 degree, well, it's 2 degree conjunction and a 3 degree conjunction of Hades and Kronos. Now, Kronos is Saturn's dad, so he's very serious about like responsibility and doing things the right way. And Hades could be this idea of like kind of like silent suffering, right? Very psychological. Why do I want to say that? Because things could feel a lot more dire and a lot more serious than they actually are in reality, right? And Jupiter is aspecting them. So you could really feel this, like when it comes to 11th house energies, your goals, your gains, some sort of family situation, sort of situation connected to one of your kids, right? Because it's Venus in Cancer can also be very connected to our kids, especially when it comes to their future, right? You could feel this. this energy of restriction, right? This energy of like, I don't know if this is the right thing, right? That they're doing. You could feel kind of very stuck. You might not feel completely on the same page as your kids right now. You might not be totally on the same page, having to do with like where it is that you're going, what it is that you want to do, and the other people in your life. And we do have Pluto is opposing Mercury. Mercury's finally at a retrograde on the 11th, the day before this, but we have this opposition here. Oppositions are nothing to be crazy mad at, right? We have two oppositions going on in this mid-month, Pluto and Mercury, and Mars and Saturn. Okay, between the second house and the eighth house, right? Mars in the second house has you like, come on, let's go, let's make money. And that Saturn energy in the eighth house, again, has to do with other people's money and creating the change and transformation, having to do with the path that you want to be on. So your mind and your energy and what it is that you're actually doing in the 3D is not going to be keeping up to speed with your desires, right? Or your desires are going to be a little quicker than what it is that you're able to do in the moment. That's that's okay. These oppositions, I want you to think about you and this situation, this other person, whoever it is, right? So for you guys, this eighth house could have to do with, it could have to do with a family member. It could have to do with one of your kids. It could have to do with, just your daily responsibilities. But it's like you're in this space of worry. Virgo, I see you like a worry, worry, worry right now, right? Things are going to get better. So you don't want to allow any sort of that worrying energy to block anything that wants to come in. Because I'm telling you right now, some sort of change in that career, some sort of change in the trajectory of your life. This is ultimately a good thing. Whoever you are so worried about, it's not as bad as you think. I promise. Okay. So these oppositions are just like sitting across the table from each other saying, we're not leaving this table until we figure it out, until everybody feels heard. We don't have to agree. We just have to respect each other. Everything's going to be okay. That's it. That's it. Because this Mars and this Mercury, they're inner planets. They're fast moving. I don't want you to sweat this opposition. This beautiful alignment, these sextiles and trines that are happening here, they're going to be hanging out for a while. Those are the ones that you want to focus on. Things are going to be okay. So you really want to choose your battles here. Honestly, things are a lot better than you realize. Like they are. Now, I love this Venus, this Jupiter energy in the 11th house, because when we're talking about goals and gains, it's the house. Do you have enough money to retire? Do you have enough money to buy that house? Do you have enough money to make that move, to do that thing that you want to do? So even though you might be feeling a little alone, even though you might be really worried, yes, you do. Everything is going to work out. It is. It's a beautiful energy. It's there until next June. So just use this year really wisely. Because when we say the planets are aligned in your favor, the planets are certainly aligned in your favor right now. It's just really nice. It's just new beginnings, new beginnings, new beginnings. Even if it feels a little uncomfortable going into those new beginnings, everything is really going to be okay. All right, my friends. So I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Take care now. Bye-bye. Libra, I hope you guys are doing great. I'm going to go into shared screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So we have this very cool planetary alignment, and let's just talk about that again. We have Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn. We have them trining and sextiling. Beautiful. We're going to go through for what it means to you, but generally speaking, society is just going to be settling in finally to a new normal. It's been really crazy, a lot of things being revealed, a lot of things are actually also going to be getting returned to for some further truth revelations. There's been a lot of instability, right? Now, finally, with Uranus and Gemini, that was the last of the four to sort of situate himself. And now we're going to have these four outer planets in this beautiful conversation for a while. We do have those inner planets always doing their things, the Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter. But again, those are more connected to our day-to-day experience, very connected to our emotions. So I don't want you to really sweat those. And I'm only saying that because we do have a couple of oppositions that we're going to talk about, but those are even really nicely aspected, if that makes sense. So let's open this up. We're going to start with Pluto. Pluto is in your fifth house, Libra. So there is change and transformation in fifth house energies, which has to do with children, entrepreneurial efforts, right? Anything having to do with a business, any sort of creative projects that you're working on, monetizable talent, your ability to take a chance on something, your ability to be joyful and happy. It's also very connected to falling in love, love affairs, romance. Or some of you may be meeting somebody new. I mean, with this energy, I mean, that's very likely for a lot of you, especially because it's sextiling Saturn and Neptune. So Saturn and Neptune, right? So let's talk about this. First of all, back to this Pluto energy in Aquarius, it's very future focused, right? Aquarius is about new, different, out of the box. There's some sort of change there, sort of change in that arena of your life. So we have Saturn and Neptune are in a sextile, which is a very supportive positioning in the seventh house, which is, yes, it's marriage, it's contracts, literal and metaphorical. So it could be your boss or bosses, it could be your energetic output at work. And because Saturn does rule your, it rules career, it's very connected to career. I'm going to tell you first and foremost, I do see some sort of disappointment in this area. This is not an end all. Everything's going to be great. It's going to be so much better than you imagine, but there's some sort of disappointment going on here. All right. Now, the disappointment can involve your significant other. It can also involve having to do with a mother energy or a first family energy. There could be some sort of family situation where because these very interesting because the North Node is conjuncting the Moon in this mid-August, right? That I have up here, August 11th. But we have it working with the Neptune and Saturn, not in a conjunction, together, but the two of these separately. There could be some sort of disappointment that's going on underneath your surface, having to do with how a relationship is going. Saturn has this ability when he conjuncts Neptune in the seventh of bringing a lot of reality to our relationships, a lot of reality to our work situation, a lot of reality to, and it's in Aries. Aries rules the path that we're on. And a lot of times this will happen as a way of saying, okay, it's about acceptance now. Because for you, acceptance of what is everything. This is where all the blessings are going to come. Okay. And being able to tweak and make adjustments to make things really what it is that you want, especially over the course of the next year, is entirely possible. So if you're feeling a disappointment right now, having to do with, it could be a job situation, equally, it could have to do with a relationship situation or a family situation as well. Things are going to work out, okay? They are. These energies are just going to be settling in. But this here, this can absolutely bring some very faded, big changes. And I'm saying faded because the vertex is in there as well, having to do with your most important relationships. It could even be a best friend. It could be, again, your bosses. But that energy is sextiling Uranus. Uranus in the ninth house. Sudden reversals, change and transformation. That's what Uranus is all about in the sign of Gemini. The way you think, the way you communicate, the way you process. Where is it happening? In the ninth house part of your energy. Now, the ninth house is the manifestation of father energy. It's going to be some big changes, some big sudden reversals having to do with father energy. But what else is it? It's foreign land, foreign travel. It's higher education, higher mindedness, publishing, marketing, advertising, getting something out there to the world. right? I love this space with the sign of Gemini in there. You could certainly be publishing, marketing, starting some sort of, because Uranus rules technology, getting online, starting a podcast, getting on YouTube, doing something like that that's very connected to your work, that's very connected to perhaps your marriage, very connected to whatever, however you're experiencing this seventh house energy. Very nice. So for those of you who want to do that, right, I'm going to say good luck. You're not even really going to need it, right? It could certainly be manifesting in that way. Nice energies there. Now, Pluto is also going to be trining Uranus. So Pluto in the fifth, trining this fifth house energy as well. So I do want to also acknowledge that the ninth house is, the rules are lawyers as well. So there could be some sort of sudden reversal with some sudden situation having to do with some sort of legal circumstance, right? That's going to be going on. There could be some sort of sudden reversal having to do with the manifestation of father energy, right? I don't want to make it about that because I do feel like this is really, first and foremost, going to be a very positive thing. But the ninth house is also our truth. And when it's trining the fifth house, whatever it is that you're going to be doing, whatever direction you are going in right now, that is where you belong, Libra. You know what I'm saying? Like this is like lining up. Now, let's just add another layer on top of that to reinforce that interpretation. Let's look at your 10th house. We have Jupiter and Venus are conjunct. Now, are they also conjunct Hades and Kronos? Kronos is Saturn's dad, Hades. These are very psychological though, where we could feel very kind of alone, a little isolated when we're thinking about our future, when we're thinking about some sort of family situation that's going on. Not that we don't have other people engaged in it, but within yourself, you can easily feel a little alone, right? But you are being so blessed right now. So this is the thing. I don't want you to get sucked down that rabbit hole. That's not going to last, right? This is so good for your career, your public reputation, your standing in the world, where it is that you're going. Very nice energy. Now, you may be very happy about one part of your life, because this is another way that this can manifest, right? Something great that's going on. Jupiter conjunct Venus is very connected to parenting energy, particularly in the sign of Cancer in the 10th house, which is the manifestation of mother energy. So you might be really excited about something that's going on with your kids, or about maybe you're having a kid, planning on having a child, maybe you're adopting, something like that. Maybe you're starting a business, you're just going in a different direction. But it's like, side note, issues with mama going on, perhaps, right? There might be some sort of challenges where you have this sort of quiet suffering and this quiet strife, right? That's going on kind of underneath things as well, right? That is an obvious interpretation there. You may be feeling that. Again, deal with that as you may. It doesn't mean that positive things aren't going on. Now, we have a couple of oppositions that we just kind of have to call out. And I want you to think about these oppositions, though, Libra, as you and another person sitting across the table saying, we're not leaving this table until we figure this out. All right, we're going to figure this out because we have Mercury is opposing Pluto and we have Mars is opposing Saturn. So Mercury in the 11th house, having to do with goals and gains, the future, Leo, children, falling in love, a business, anything like that, opposing Pluto in the fifth house. Fifth house is where Leo lives, right? So there's some sort of tension that has to be talked about, having to do with the future, having to do with money. How are things going to be? Are we going to have enough? How is it all going to work? And really kind of having that conversation. Mars is very exalted in the first house because he rules the first house, right? He's the landlord there, and he's opposing the Saturn energy. First house is all about the path that you're walking on, right? It's fresh path, new perspectives. It's very connected to new beginnings and throwing your energy into new beginnings. And it is opposing the seventh house in Saturn, which could have to do with your energetic output at work. It could have to do with where it is that you're going in your relationship. So there can be some tension having to do with like how motivated is your partner to be on board with everything, right? How comfortable are you having to do with your energetic output at work, right? This is a temporary thing that's just going to require some adjustment after conversation. There has to be conversation. The tension is happening purposefully so that we could sit down, especially mid-August, and have the open conversations about how it is that we're really feeling about these areas of your life. Okay, my friends? So those are the biggest things that are going on with this particular energy. Now, I just want to remind you that Jupiter moves out of Cancer by June 2026. Mercury moves, Mars moves. But that Pluto energy, this Saturn and Neptune energy, this Uranus energy, those are hanging out within conversational degrees of each other for the rest of the year. So the good stuff, that's going to be the foundation rather than the crazy stuff being the foundation. The good stuff is going to be the foundation. So when you're feeling that tension and you're feeling that stress, talk it out, especially mid-August. Like that's a really good time to have those conversations about things that have been building up on your heart, having to do with that situation that's connected to the future. Have the conversation. Okay, because then it's going to move out, right? And remember, you don't want to sweat those quicker inner planet transits. Okay, my friends. So again, I hope that was helpful. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye. Scorpio, hope you guys are doing great. I'm going to go into shared screen so you could see the chart, not to confuse you. I know a lot of you like it, a lot of you hate it when I show the chart. Anyway, let's just talk about the interpretation of everything. So this planetary alignment, so rare, right? It hasn't been, we haven't had this alignment since 1844. Very important between Pluto, between Saturn and Neptune and Uranus. Beautiful sextiles and trines within a pretty close degree of proximity. We're going to have this transit really for at least the next year. So that's going to be more the foundation. The good stuff is going to be more the foundation. The tricky energies having to do with the inner planets, that would be Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury. Those things are going to happen. We do have some really nice energies, but we do have a couple of oppositions that we'll talk about. But let's get right into it. So Pluto in the fourth house. We've been talking about this. There's going to be some sort of changey situation going on in that fourth house of home, property, real estate. There could also be some sort of changes, relational changes having to do with family members as well, right? Whether it's your own kids or people who are, living in your home. It could be members of your first family. There could be some situations going on there as well. But changes in that space having to do with your emotional stability as well. Now, Pluto is retrograde, guys, and we've talked about this a lot. Pluto is your ruler, Scorpio, so you guys do feel this very strongly. And when Pluto is retrograde, he does not want to be he does not want to not be in control. He doesn't want anybody to control him. So when it comes to that home, property, real estate, emotional stability, we could tend to want what we want the way we want it, especially when it comes to our future. This is how it's got to be. But because it is opposing Mercury, not mad at this opposition, guys. I'm not. Guess what? Mars is also opposing Saturn. It's got to be this kind of situation where you're sitting down with people and you're having this open conversation about what is really going on here, and not leaving the table until we figure it out. That's what's got to be going on, right? A lot of the energy, especially in mid-August, will be very, very supportive of that. But going back to this Pluto energy, so there's some change there. Now it's sextiling Saturn and Neptune in the sixth house, and it's square and it's trining rather Uranus in the eighth house. Okay, so these are very big changes for you. Okay, so let's break it down. We already discussed this Pluto energy, what it means, what part of life is it going to be impacting your fourth house. Saturn conjuncting Neptune. Saturn is very much about responsibility, restriction, delay. Neptune is about our strong desires, our fantasies, very connected to creativity, being creative behind the scenes, really going after our dreams. And with Saturn there, if it's connected in that sixth house where you're doing something for work that's connected to your ability to be creative, this is a lovely, lovely pairing. It just really is. It's beautiful. I got to tell you, especially if you're working from home. Right? Or if you're in a position where you need to move for work. Very, very nice energy there, right? And you may end up someplace where you didn't even expect, right? Where if I would have said to you last year at this time, Scorpio, you're going to be living in this place having to do with work, or end up living in such and such a place having to do with primarily because of some sort of either health issue or some sort of significant change in your responsibilities that are going to be, it's going to change your day-to-day experience and you're going to end up living here. You would have been like, girl, you are high. I am not, no, 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 right? It's like suddenly you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is totally my reality. It's a good thing. This is a good thing for you. It's not a bad thing. Okay. Because this sixth house energy, beautiful for all of those creative things, right? That we talked about. But look, we do have to talk about the shadow side of Neptune because that is just reality. He's also very connected to self-sabotaging behavior. He's very connected to disease and disease. And the sixth house is the house of health. So when we have Saturn in there, conjuncting Neptune, there could be some tricky challenges having to do with our health, having to do, right? It could be some sort of very like feeling very physical, right? Where it's a shoulder, a hip, an ankle, something like that. Not specifically in those spaces. I don't even want to really say that because that's ankles are very Piscean, right? But you do have the North Node in there. Anyway, could be some sort of health situation that you're dealing with. Maybe you just aren't feeling 100% yourself. Could be that. Or it could be that you're just feeling really stuck, right? Just really stuck in your day-to-day environment. You can absolutely be feeling that, right? But Pluto is sextiling that energy, where it's saying, no, 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 come on. We just have to think about things very Aquarian, very different, very out of the box. We have to envision things differently than what it is that we were thinking. Now, Pluto trining Uranus, I do want to say in the sign of Gemini, this could be like a mortgage that you're taking out, some sort of mortgage, or signing some sort of contract, or dealing with some sort of, because Uranus is very much about quick reversals, right? It's these reversals, and the eighth house does have to do with mortgages, insurance payouts, inheritance, investments. So money coming to you. So some sort of payout coming to you where you didn't actually do all the work for that money coming in. So it could be some sort of investment payout, right? So Uranus in the third, in Gemini, which is the landlord of the third house, Uranus in Gemini in the eighth house could be with that Pluto energy in the fourth. If you were selling a piece of property where you're making really good money on it, right? That could be really, really good for you. So that could be good. The eighth house, what does the eighth house represent for that Uranian energy? So first of all, Uranus in Gemini, again, sudden reversal. So thinking about something very differently. Thinking is very Geminian. Being able to write, communicate very, very differently, very Uranian, different than how you've been, very out of the box, very different. But the part of your life that's going to be experiencing that shift in perspective, where is it going to be happening? The eighth house, again, has to do with other people's money, investments, taxes, debt. But it's also life and death. It's absolute commitment, and it's also divorce. So, it's where we blend with other, and it's also where we decide to separate because it's the planet of change. It's where you live. But that Uranian energy is going to come in and bring this sudden reversal, this sudden messages, right? So there could be this sudden realization or these messages coming in that you realize things are perhaps not as you thought when it comes to shared resources or the way somebody else is connected to you. In a business transaction or even in a romantic situation, right? So there could be some sort of sudden reversal there. But this is the thing. That energy is sextiling Saturn and Neptune. It's trining Pluto. So this is like a blessing. Whatever sudden reversal is coming in, it's coming in as a blessing. So this is when I look at this, I say, all right, you have the way that you really wanted things to go, the way that you thought things were going to go, and then you have reality. And reality is actually really good, even if you don't see it right now. So go with the changes. This is so important. There are changes that are happening, and they're going to be better for you than not. Now, on top of that, hold that thought for a second, right? Let's look at your ninth house. We have Jupiter conjuncting Venus. What? I mean, Jupiter is beyond exalted in this place, Scorpio, for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, Jupiter is home in the ninth house. Who doesn't like being at home? As nice as it is to visit other people's houses, who doesn't like being in their own bed at night? So Jupiter loves being in the ninth house, and he loves being in Cancer. He's so exalted. And let's just throw on top of that, he's conjunct Venus, the baby benefic. So we have the major benefic and the baby benefic together in the house of truth, in the house of growth, in the house of advancement. It is also foreign land, foreign travel, higher education, higher mindedness, law, legalities, local governance, the manifestation of father energy. It's this idea of truth and being able to grow and expand and just be more and just have more, right? It's publishing, it's marketing, it's advertising. It's a beautiful house. It's very big, right? I'm mentioning a lot of things. Jupiter expands whatever it's in. It's expanding. Okay. Very nice energy. Guys, great energy to meet somebody new if you're on vacation and you're like drinking a daiquiri by the pool. Very nice energy to meet somebody from a very different culture than you, somebody who's, a little out of the box, a little different. But this is the little thing, this is the little caveat that I'm telling all the signs. It is conjunct Hades and Kronos, right? Kronos is Saturn's dad. Hades, these are very psychological energies. These are psychological energies where you can feel kind of alone when you're thinking about your home, family, because it's in Cancer, where it is that you're growing, what it is that you're doing. You could feel that way. But the thing is, there's got to be some sort of conversation, Scorpio, because we have this Pluto opposing Mercury, finally out of retrograde the day before. This mid-August, there's got to be some sort of conversation with a family member or anyone that's in your life that is connected to your ability to feel emotionally secure. There's got to be this conversation that's going on, right? Now we have Mars opposing Saturn. Again, we're not leaving the table until everybody is heard, right? Very important. Because look, we have Mars, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, right? Across the line. Trining Pluto. Mercury, having this energy to want to fix something. You want to fix something. I understand it. Pluto is sextiling Uranus. That's why I'm saying these oppositions that are going on, even those are beautifully aspected. So the tension is going to be there, but you're not leaving the table until everybody comes clean, everybody is honest. Everybody's got to be honest. But Scorpio, please, my friend, this is coming from such a good place. With that Mars in Libra at 2 degrees in the middle of the month, we have to be very careful of not having tunnel vision because Mars rules war, Mars rules arguments, and it's in that 12th house of self-sabotaging behavior, cusping up to Virgo, that very critical energy, because you're very concerned about your future. You want to watch out how your words are coming out, right? When you're having these very important and ultimately positive conversations with these other people, particularly anybody that is connected to your inner base. And that would be anyone in your family, whether it's your children, whether it's your siblings, whatever, whoever it is. We have to have this kind of concession where it's like, okay, we might be on a different page. We got to get on the same page. Maybe it's not the way that you really ultimately wanted it, but you're going to end up in a really good spot. Okay, there's going to be a lot of focus on the idea, obviously, of children until we reach that third week when the sun goes into Virgo in your 11th house. But until then, that focus is really going to be very much on that 10th house. So again, nobody's leaving the table until the conversations are done, but the conversations have to be done with absolute honesty, right? And we have to be willing to hear each other on both sides. Okay. So that's really, really important because you want to have nice generation of karma right now, right? So the changes are going on, that angular fourth house going on, right? Sextile in the sixth house, having to do your day-to-day responsibilities. So whatever changes you're making in your home environment, it's going to be very good for your day-to-day experience, your health, your ability to be responsible, feel responsible. But it is trining, right? That eighth house, it's going to require change and transformation and something very out of the box, something very different. Okay. So that is what I have for you guys right now. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Enjoy this energy, guys. Don't be afraid of the little tense things, face those head on, right? 'Cause those are nothing but a thing. These outer planets are just so optimistic, right? That's what I have for you, my friends. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Sagittarius, I hope you guys are doing great. So I'm going into shared screen so I can show you your chart. We have to talk about this beautiful alignment. I mean, this is, it hasn't been since 1844. This is just going to really shift the political landscape, the societal landscape. It's shifting things. There's no question, right? And we're just beginning it now, but it's going to be there for a while, right? And without getting too tech, too in the weeds, having to do with astrology, the degrees that they're going to be at, these outer planets, meaning Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Uranus, they're going to be in close conversation for over a year, well over a year. Okay, so what I'm going to discuss having to do with the positive manifestation, I want you to understand that those are going to take priority energetically over a couple of the oppositions that we're going to talk about, and anything else because even those oppositions are beautifully situated, but oppositions can be a little stressful, but you have such a beautiful energy around it that it's just going to be a hiccup, right, in the grand scheme of things. So let's unpack this. Let's start with Pluto first. So Pluto is in your third house here, right? So yeah, it's retrograde. We've discussed what that means, what's going on. It's in Aquarius, having to do with the future, having to do with doing things differently, out of the box, very connected to technology, very connected to advances in science, advances in medicine, right? Pluto retrograde does not like to be controlled. So you're in a space where you do not want your thoughts, your communication controlled. You want to be able to say and do what it is that you want to say and do. This is not to say that you are not open to negotiating things. After all, you are the sign of negotiation. Because you are. I mean, we have the sun in the ninth house, so you're very open to this idea, but you are pretty set in what it is that you think, believe, and feel. Now, Pluto, when it's, again, especially when it's retrograde, it's very much like that. But you guys, just generally speaking, you can expect to actually change a lot of your perspectives. And Pluto's a long transit. But that's the part of life where you're going to be feeling it. Third house is also your siblings, your extended family, your neighbors, your neighborhood. Some of you may be like, I want to move. Or you may be in a space where you're realizing that between like this year and last year, the way that you communicate or the connection that you have with your siblings is different than it was, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be like bad or good. It's different, right? Because it's Pluto. Things are changing, right, in that particular arena. So that's the Pluto energy. It's sextiling this Saturn and Neptune, which are at 1 degree. Yes, they are retrograde, in the fifth house. So sextiles are very supportive, and the fifth house has to do with our children. It has to do with falling in love, love affairs, romance, entrepreneurial activities, monetizable talents. That could be any sort of creative project that you're working on. It rules our ability to take a chance on things, right? Go for it kind of energy. And because it's Saturn, Saturn is very connected to our career, our public reputation, our standing in the world, our long-term plans. And Neptune is about our deepest desires, our strong dreams, our fantasies, right? And Saturn and Neptune, Saturn can give us the gumption that we need to actually manifest our dreams. And in the fifth house of entrepreneurial energies, of creative pursuits, we have that joie de vivre, that air under our wings that we need to go after what it is that we want. So it could be a beautiful kind of alignment when, now I'm just looking at it through the lens of having to do with your career. Very nice. Now, we have two houses away from that in a sextile to this Saturn and Neptune, and in a trine to Pluto in the seventh house of contracts. It's in the sign of Gemini, which is all about communicating and signing contracts. Sudden reversals are what goes on with Uranus. So you could have had some sort of deal squared away, and suddenly it fell apart. But suddenly something else comes along and you're signing that contract again. You're signing, you're connecting, you are getting hired for that job. You are making that change in your day-to-day work environment. It's something that's, it's like this sudden reversal that comes out of nowhere. It's going to be impacting for a lot of you. It is going to be impacting your work for a lot of you in a very, very good way. Okay. These are good energies. Now let's just talk about what's tricky. Okay, first let's talk about the fake trickiness. I'm going to talk about what I call this a fake challenge, right? Venus conjunct Jupiter. This is a beautiful conjunction. Jupiter loves to be in Cancer, loves, loves, loves. Okay. It's conjuncting Venus, Venus in that eighth house. Eighth house, what is the eighth house? It has to do with other people's money. It has to do with investments, people giving you money. So maybe they're giving you money for a project, open a business, do something like that. Maybe they're giving you money like a partner gives you money, an inheritance, an insurance payout, or some sort of cashing in, right, of some sort of investment, right? It rules the stock market. It's, I mean, Jupiter with Venus in there is just lovely, lovely for like crypto and Bitcoin and any of that stuff. Like really, really nice energy here. There's no question. But it is also working with Hades and Kronos. It's also working with the vertex, really. It's only a few degrees away. It's only 5 degrees away. Anything within 10 degrees, I pay attention to. And the vertex is what does reference something very fated happening. Kronos is Saturn's stat. He's very like much about doing the right thing. And Hades is, we're talking about very psychological energies here, right? Psychologically, you could feel like a little alone. You could feel a little worried about how things are going to be turning out, right? When it comes to the sharing here, Jupiter is very expansive. Venus is very connected. These both are very connected to money, right? It's in the sign of Cancer, which can make us feel a little emotionally insecure, could make us feel like that. But at the same time, that doesn't take away from the fact that manifesting in the 3D, you're getting money from someplace, or you're some sort of eighth house energy. Again, there could be the ability to pay off debt. Now, depending on what's going on in your birth chart, this could be an expansion of debt. I'm sorry. I don't know like what's in that space. The eighth house is endings and beginnings. It's life and death. It's change and transformation. So that's definitely happening in that space. But the two of these together are generally very, very beneficial. So this is a very nice energy, by the way, because it's in Cancer in the eighth house. If you wanted to sell your house and make some money on it, woo, great energy. Honestly, you and Scorpios, like if you have something, some sort of property, real estate transaction going on, if you're not selling and you're buying, let's just say, really nice energy here. There's no question. Plus, the North Node is in the fourth house. So good. Go for it. It's going to be a good investment. You're going to make money. That's for those of you who are dealing with that. Others of you, you're able to, first and foremost, what I see is somehow start chomping away down at your debt, getting money from somebody, really, just really nice energy there. Okay. So that's that energy. Now let's talk about, so we talked about this fifth house, right? Having to do with, going after your dreams, your strong desires. Neptune does have another side. Neptune does rule disease and disease. Neptune also does rule self-sabotaging behavior. And when Saturn is conjunct, Saturn doesn't like that, right? So Saturn is like, no, be responsible, get out of your own way, stop doing that thing, right? Now, it's in the house of children, it's in the house of falling in love, love affairs, romance, it's in the house of our joy and happiness. So if you're in this space where you're realizing you have all of these things going on, all these balls in the air, but yet you're not happy, there's got to be this stepping back and saying, okay, where might I be able to make some changes to change my experience, where you're taking ownership, right, in that space. Um, and there could also be a little bit of a worry situation going on with the health circumstance with one of your kids, right? This could certainly be where you're worried about, you're worried about your kids. There's some sort of like concern that's going on. Now, I do want to say that because we have the sextile to Pluto, and we have the sextile to Uranus, there is assistance available. I'm not worried about this. If there is some sort of concern, there's some sort of blessing that's also taking place. So I'm not saying you should really worry too much about it, but we have to understand that Mars is also opposing this energy as well. And that Mars energy in the 11th has to do with goals and gains going into the future. It has to do with group work, right? The masses, getting something out there. The 11th house also rules technology, right? Advances in science, advances in medicine, doing things very differently, right? So with the Saturn energy conjuncting the Neptune, like this would be being able to fight off some sort of health challenge with like the right help, the right medicine, the right science, the right approach to something. Can absolutely be going on, right? So there is I'm not going to say there's an upside, but I don't want you to worry about it because there is a positive manifestation of it. Others of you with this Mars energy opposing Saturn and Neptune as well, there could be some sort of, again, challenge having to do with, where your kids are at as far as what it is that they want for their future. And you could just be simply worried about them, right? However, in your own life, right? In your own life, being really focused also on how are you showing up in relationship, because the fact is we have Uranus here in the seventh house, and so some big changes are going to be happening, like it or not, in that seventh house, having to do with your marriage or your most important relationships, having to do with a bosses, anything like that. There are changes that are going to be taking place, right? And so because we have the sextile to the fifth house, when it comes to your marriage, looking at fifth house is romance, it's connection, right? Where's the romance? Where's the connect? Where's the friendship? Right? Is the friendship there? And being able to manifest something differently, to deepen it, even if it's just connecting differently, maybe incorporating more date nights, opening up the channels of communication a little bit better. Those are all beautifully aspected, right? Having to do with relationship. At the same time, Sagittarius, you may be dealing with something because the seventh house is the person also that you're in the relationship with. And because we have Uranus in there, there could be something that's going on that's in their life that's changing as well. Now, because it's in Gemini, maybe they're writing a book, maybe they're getting into teaching, maybe they're starting a podcast or some sort of channel, or maybe they are agreeing to Gemini's neighborhoods. Maybe they want to change neighborhoods. Maybe they're getting some sort of new opportunity presented to them in their life as well. Right? I mean, this could absolutely be going on as well. So the oppositions, that we talked about, I don't want you to worry about them too much, because even the Mercury opposing Pluto here, that Mercury in the ninth house, having to do with foreign land, foreign travel, publishing, marketing, advertising, getting something out there to the world. In Leo, it could have to do with a project or some sort of entrepreneurial situation, or something to do with your kids. The opposition to Pluto, there, you want to be careful here. I do want to just say that if you're negotiating anything, you could be a little too dug in, having your heels dug in. You want to just loosen those reins a little bit. I'm not saying entirely, I'm just saying a little bit, be able to see things, from a little bit of a different perspective. But the fact that it is sextiling this Pluto and Neptune, and it is trining Uranus, I do feel like that's going to help this situation very nicely, right? And also, this Mars is sextiling Mercury, where this Mars is opposing Saturn. I mean, we have like sextiles and trines all flipping day long in the middle of August. So I'm telling everyone, if you have to have that important conversation with somebody, the middle of August is when you should be having it. There is no question. There may be a very important conversation that you have to have with one of your siblings, a very important conversation that you're having with somebody about a particular contract, and also a very important conversation that you're having regarding something that's going on with your children. At least one of your children. I feel like it's it could be your oldest or your second oldest, to be honest with you, both, right? Because the fifth house is your oldest and the seventh house is your second oldest. And your third oldest would be in that ninth house energy where this Mars is sextiling Mercury. So there might be like not a meeting of the minds with your third oldest if that's the situation, but there's like straight up like concern about your other kids, right? Yeah. So yeah, your second oldest might just be changing their mind when it comes to something. Seventh house has to do with marriage. Seventh house also has to do with their energetic output at work. So maybe their marriage or the relationship is fine, but they're changing, making some sort of having a changing of heart when it comes to what it is that they do. Um, so so these are some of the messages that are going to be, hitting you. A lot of you, yeah. I mean, a lot of you sort of like behind the scenes, again, having to do with this very faded energy, the vertex, Hades and Chronos in that eighth house, having to do with shared resources, other people's money, connecting, especially when it comes to property, real estate, some sort of home situation going on. There's going to have to be a lot of honesty about that, about shared resources, and just like a sit down, having a realistic conversation about who needs what when it comes to feeling emotionally set and emotionally secure. There's going to have to be a lot, like what you don't want to do in this energy, Sag, is skirt any issues, like blah, 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 say it all, right? Seriously, you want to just have the conversations about the future, right? It won't be comfortable for you, but have them anyway. You're going to be so happy you did. Okay, my friend. So that is what I have for you. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you guys next time. Take care now. Bye-bye. Capricorn, I hope you guys are doing great. I'm going to go into shared screen, show you guys the chart. Let's break this out. This is a really, really good alignment. Hasn't happened since 1844. We have Pluto sextiling Saturn and Neptune, and Saturn and Neptune are sextiling Uranus. Pluto and Uranus are trining each other. We have a couple of oppositions that are going to go on this month, but they're even going to be sextiling these other good energies. So the opposition, yes, it could be a little stressful, but this to me is completely beneficial stress because whatever stress we're experiencing, middle of August, we should be having the conversation. You're having the conversation. So beautiful. Because the reality is, look, the outer planets are really, really important to like large life changes, right? Whereas the inner planets, where it's Venus and Mars and Mercury and Jupiter, those are very important, but those aspects are much quicker moving. So the impact will hit, we'll experience, and then we can kind of get back to normal or at least a little new normal. When we're talking about these outer planets, this is literally like shifting. And we're going to have these four planets, these four outer planets, within very close degrees of conversation for a while, right? You just have to know for the rest of the year, we are going to have it. Absolutely, right? So understand that the foundation of the energy is no longer going to be in this weird, twisty, like squares and stuff, right? That have been going on. So we are entering a time where things are just going to finally start making better sense. It's going to look very different. I mean, suffice to say, society just in general, societally, politically, I mean, huge, huge changes just across the board. But let's talk about what it means for you guys. Okay, so you guys have Pluto. in Aquarius in the second house. So Pluto in Aquarius is out of the box. It's different. It's change. Um, but sudden, right? Because that second house, your second house is ruled by Uranus, which is like sudden reversals. And now with Pluto in there, Pluto is ready to make change, right? In this Aquarius energy, when it comes to the money that you make, the money in your account, how it is that you feel about yourself. That second house is very connected to your internal health. But there are changes going on here, right? That's the part of life where the changes are happening. But it's sextiling the fourth house. So the fourth house, Saturn, Neptune, 1 degree, new beginnings, Saturn, responsibilities. He could indicate delay. He could indicate a little bit of no, not yet. But he's conjuncting Neptune, which is about our deepest desires, what it is that we really, really want. It's our dreams. It's what we would ideally wish to have. And Saturn gives us the stability and the legs and the energy, actually, to make those things happen. Now, there is another side to Neptune as well, and I do discuss that. We can't ignore Neptune, the other side, self-sabotaging behavior, disease and disease, right? So it's in the sign of Aries. Now, Aries is about fresh path and new perspective, right? So Saturn conjunct Neptune and Aries in the fourth house, when it comes to our emotional stability, we do want to make sure that we're patient when it comes to being able to manifest what it is that we want, because patience is required. Everything's going to be fine, Capricorn, but there's just some patience right now that's required when it comes to a family situation and or a property real estate situation, maybe even simply just your own emotional security, because that might be a little tricky right now with that Pluto energy retrograde in the second house, because Pluto retrograde does not want to be controlled. He wants to be in control. And that second house has to do with stability for the long term. It has to do with money. It has to do with that. So you're in a space right now where you are very serious. But guys, guess what? That is trining Uranus, and this Saturn and Neptune energy that I just discussed in the fourth house is sextiling Uranus. This is so good, particularly for a work situation having to do with your money. You're working differently, Capricorn. There's no question in my mind. I mean, even let's just look at the fact that you have the South Node in Virgo. I mean, the South Node is changing the way in which you do something. It's less about totally letting go, but it's going to be in there for another year. So it's approaching work. Virgo is very connected to work. It's also very connected to health, but just approaching these things in a very different way than you previously did. So you're changing, and therefore the change within you is going to manifest as these really, really great changes in a very deeply personal way. Because look at the houses, house 2, 4, and 6. These are very personal. It's these higher houses that are very public out in the world, right? So you're doing a lot of changing within yourself and how it is that you even define emotional security, security in general, right? What it is that you do and how it is that you define that. There's going to be a huge change in your daily responsibilities. A lot of you are going to be getting a new job. A lot of you are going to be making significant changes having to do with your finances. A lot of you will be. Having to do with the finances with this Pluto energy. You want to look at your own chart. You want to look at what is natally in your eighth house, because what's in your eighth house, it could be an opposition. Now, oppositions are not the end of the world, but it's stress. It means that you have to sit down and iron something out. Right. And the eighth house represents other people's money. So this would be a partner's money, right? A marital partner or a life partner or a business partner, right? Money that somebody else brings in that's not actually from your own work. It also rules debt and taxes. It rules the stock market. It rules inheritance, insurance payouts, anything like that, right? When we're looking at it through the lens of finances only, right? And so we do have this Pluto retrograde opposing Mercury right in this mid-April, this mid-August. The day before, Mercury will have just come out of retrograde. So he's still going to be in post shadow. But the thing is, he is working with some nice energy here, right? In that house anyway. So the opposition is going to be there, yes, but he's also going to be in a sextile to Uranus. So this idea of the future, this idea of needing to make changes, it's very, very supportive of some sort of shared resources, some sort of shared responsibility. Now, I'm just jumping around here. We have Mercury and Leo. Leo is in um, the fifth house energy, which is where Taurus is, and then we have Taurus lives in the second house. So, yeah, so I really do see some sort of opportunity coming in for you guys to be able to satisfy your future financial goals in a much more clear way, right? It's going to be very, very clear for you. Now, Saturn in the fourth house can be a little tricky when it comes to family situations. We have Neptune in there. You want to make sure you're not like feeling sorry for yourself or any sort of like home property real estate situation that's going on. That's the kiss of death, and there's no value add in that. We do have this Mars opposition, right? So you're like, yeah, but having to do with that career or having to do with that, how people know me, wanting that respect, wanting to go after that thing. I feel that opposition. Well, you have to sit down and have a conversation with that person. Maybe you're just having to have a conversation with yourself, but you have to have a conversation with somebody else. Maybe it's a significant other about how you feel about the relationship and the contribution and how emotionally secure you feel, just in your life in general, and figuring out a new strategy because even though it's in an opposition, it's in a very nice space. I mean, Mars is trining Pluto. It's trining Pluto. It's trining Uranus. It's sextiling Mercury. So Mars, yeah, he's about fighting and war and all of that, but he's beautifully situated to really have these open conversations about where are we going? What does this future look like? Right? So there were a couple of things going on because I do feel like with this Jupiter and Venus conjunction in the seventh house, beautiful. You have so much energy to really advance and open up and level up your most important relationships, whether it's your marital partner, a best friend, a boss situation, or even your energetic output at work. And even if you're not feeling 100% confident in it right now, guys, okay? And the reason I'm saying that is because as beautiful as Jupiter conjunct Venus is, and it is, and Jupiter is so exalted in Cancer, so exalted. And Venus is in her home in the seventh house. And Venus rules the second house and the seventh house, right? Because where Libra lives. So everybody's exalted. Beautiful. But it is within only 2 degrees of Hades and 3 degrees of Kronos, who is Saturn's dad. He's very serious. He's very much about practical outline of plan, people, because that Hades energy can have you feeling a little alone, a little isolated. So, as beautiful as it is, that can really be very good for your marriage, very good for some sort of contract coming in. That thing, that little thing that's still like bothering you underneath the surface that's making you, because these are very psychological, Hades and Kronos, right? So, this idea of feeling very like held back, feeling kind of alone, have the conversation in the middle of August. Have the conversation 1000%, because we do have Mercury is sextiling Uranus. So, have a conversation about the future. Negotiate some sort of way of moving forward. This is so beautiful having to do with like feeling like heard and seen. And again, these are general messages because I don't know how these are connecting with your own personal birth chart, but generally speaking, beautiful. These oppositions, Mars and Saturn and uh, what was the other one? Mars and Saturn and Pluto and Mercury. Again, they're the way they're aspected to the other energies, it's so supportive. So lean into whatever tension might be coming up because tension is not a bad thing at all. At all. It's being able to unpack it in a healthy way. And the middle of the month is so good for communication. Even though Mercury is still going to be in his post shadow, I don't care. If it has to do with stuff that's been like building up before he went retrograde, have the conversations. Just make sure that everybody is understanding each other correctly. Because it could be a little still post shadow, it could be a little a little misunderstanding, but keep it calm, keep it chill, have the conversations, beautiful energy. A lot of you, again, a lot of you are going to be getting some new work. Some of you, and I'm going to say this, some of you may be finding out that there is a health circumstance that really does need some serious approach. You have the help, though, to help you do it. Please understand that. Because Uranus in the sixth house is out of the box. It's very different. It advances in science, advances in medicine, it advances in technology. So you may be doing something, connected like that, having to do with a career, but you also have those energies at your disposal if you are struggling with some sort of, turn of events having to do with your health. And I have to say that because that's also what the energies mean. But talk about support, and that's the main thing. That's more important than anything, is everything is now in a very supportive holding pattern right now, which is really nice. All right, my friends, so I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Aquarius, I hope you guys are doing great. I'm going to go into shared screen so you can see the chart. So let's talk about this very rare, it's a very rare planetary alignment between, we have Pluto here in the first, then we have Saturn and Neptune in your third, and we have Uranus in the fifth. Everyone is feeling this, though. Has not happened since 1844. The outer planets are the ones that really are life-changing. Those inner planets like Mercury and Jupiter, Venus and Mars, those are more about like day to day, more about like, how we feel about something. Do you know what I mean? Those happen and then they leave, whereas these are going to be in such, this is like changing the foundation of the energy of the world from twisted and messy to peaceful. You'll understand, when I get into it. But these energies aren't going anywhere, right? Because they're the outer planets. The outer planets move a lot slower. So finally, Uranus is in Gemini as of the middle of July, is going to be in there for over 7 years. With his Pluto is going to be a 20-year transit. You know what I'm saying? Saturn. Well, Saturn's going to be in Aries just until the beginning of September. Then he's going to dip back into Pisces. But he's still going to be in the same positioning, meaning the sextile and the trine, because he's not dipping that far out of the degree. They're still going to be we really do honor like the 10 degrees, especially like a 5-degree orb. They're still going to be in this conversation. So they're going to be this is going to be going on well over a year, right? We'll get into particulars of the time periods, another time, but just know like this is this is going to be like the new foundational energy, right? So let's unpack what this means for you, and let's us discuss a couple of oppositions that are going to be they could be a little stressful, but how blessed even the oppositions are. It's bananas. Okay, let's unpack. So as you know, you have Pluto in your sign. So putting you in the first house, particularly for those of you who are Aquarius risings, because this is the way astrology works, right? The sign that's on the first house, right? When you hear an astrology reading, it's for that rising first and foremost. Second to that would be the sun, okay? So Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius is about different, new, out of the box, revolutionary energy. Your chart is ruled by Uranus, Aquarius, right? Because you have Aquarius in the first house. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Therefore, Uranus rules your entire chart. Okay. So when it comes to these sudden reversals, the change in trend, this change that's going to be going on with Uranus is going to be very good for you. It really, really is. So That's what Pluto in Aquarius is, change and transformation. Now, right now, you have a little bit of a sticking point. Right. So some frustration having to do with the career. There is some frustration having to do with like the opportunity to really do what it is that you want to do. That's not going to last. It's not going to last. But Pluto right now happens to be retrograde. And when he's retrograde, he does not want to be controlled. And in the first house, having to do with the path that you're walking on, you have your eyes set in the way that you think things should be. Now, fine. We have this sextile in the third house of communication, of learning, of siblings, extended family, all types of education. Now, when it comes to Saturn, Saturn does rule our career, very connected to our career, public reputation, standing in the world, all long-term plans. Pluto is sextiling in the third house. So you could be learning something new for your future, learning some sort of new program. And this is not a going back to school kind of thing, right? You might be kind of arguing with yourself whether you should go back to school or shouldn't, because Mars is in the ninth house of higher education. But let's just stick with this here. So this Saturn energy, this is negotiating. This is very good. This is the axis of negotiating, communicating, right? Now he is conjuncting Neptune. Neptune is all about our deepest desires, our very, what it is that we really, really want. It doesn't say our fantasies. That sounds very hyperbolic, but our deepest desire. And Saturn gives us the energy and the stability and the fortitude to do what we need to do in order to make those dreams come true. And in the sign of Aries, it's like fresh path, new perspective. We're going different direction, different everything, right? And with that, in that space of that third house, right? It's definitely connected to learning something new, but conversations and communication. Now, we do want to make sure that we understand as well that Neptune, through a different lens, does represent self-sabotaging behavior, feeling victimized, being victimized, and also disease and disease, that kind of energy, right? So this in the third house, because the third house does rule our mental processing, and Aries does rule the brain. When we have Saturn conjunct Neptune, there could be a lot of confusion internally about what it is that we really want to do, having to do with the path that we're on. And this is all part of the process, though, Aquarius. This is the thing. Like you're in a space of confusion. You're meant to be in a space of confusion. Pluto is only at 2 degrees in your sign. You're not supposed to know what's going on yet. Wait, this year is going to bring a lot of change. As now we have this Uranus energy, the big change and transformation in the fifth house. Maybe some of you are starting a business. You're meeting a new romantic partner. Maybe you're getting pregnant, or there's some sort of new opportunity available to you because it's in the sign of Gemini. Gemini lives in the third, and this is where Aries is with Saturn and Neptune. So very personal houses, by the way. Whenever we're dealing with the bottom part of the chart, these are very deeply personal. So you want different for your life. You are going after different. There is some sort of like negotiating going on. We do want to make sure that we're taking care of our health for sure. And I'm just saying that because your immune system is a little suppressed in the month of August. So we just want to make sure, watch out for any sort of summer colds. If you're not feeling good, go to the doctor, get checked out. I do want to just say that, especially with Jupiter in the sixth house, it could sort of, and it's also working with Hades and Kronos, and it is working with Venus and the sign of Cancer. Cancer lives in the fourth house, which is Taurus, and our internal body. So we just want to make sure that there's nothing cooking, especially, having to do with our health situation. So if you don't feel well, please go make sure you get it checked out. But coming back here, this opposition to Saturn, right, between Mars and Saturn. So this is important to know for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to feel very profound, but two, and more importantly, you're very blessed with this opposition. So the opposition, whether it's Mars to Saturn or whether it's Pluto to Mercury, in that out of bounds opposition, we want to understand that it's mostly, I want you to think about being at a table with a person or a situation across the table saying, we're not leaving until we figure this out. We're not going to allow like any sort of argument or any sort of confusion or cloudy thoughts to circumvent our ability to sit down, fully think something through, and make some sort of decision on a situation. The middle of August is very, very good for having very important conversations. Because let me show you something. These oppositions, let's just take the Mars opposing Saturn, right? Mars is sextiling Mercury. It's trining Uranus. Beautiful. It just is. Saturn is sextiling Uranus. So yes, it's an opposition, but it's very blessed. It has really good energy supporting you from the sidelines, and it's on the axis of negotiating, especially anything connected to like a relationship situation, anything connected to a contract or a work opportunity as well. So being able to have those important conversations. Now, I do want to say that because Neptune does rule our ability to, go after our desires, this is still retrograde. It's not going to be retrograde for long, going into the fall. But the idea that these two are working together, um, it's very interesting because this could be a little frustrating when it comes to like trying to get a job, trying to manifest something like immediately, but none of this energy is wasted. You have the North Node in Pisces in the second house, which is doing something very different when it comes to manifesting your money. It also indicates to me, because Pisces lives in the 12th house, and that's where Capricorn is, you're actually making some sort of pivot having to do with your career over the course of the year. You have so much blessed energy around you. Now, this Uranus energy, again, just doing the trine to Pluto, Pluto trining this is the trines are like so easy that we could almost ignore it when it comes to some sort of relationship situation, when it comes to something connected with children, when it comes to something having to do with a business. You have a lot of blessings here. This is good stuff, okay? Now, it is trining Mars in the ninth house, right? So we have this one, two, three, four. Yeah. So it is trining that energy in Mars in the ninth house. So you're very supported by ninth house energy, which has to do with the law, legalities, local governance. It has to do with higher mindedness, religion, organized or otherwise. It's the house that God speaks to us in. Guys, you are not alone. Your guardian angels are all over you, honestly. You have such good energetic support. But this is the thing, Mars will move out of there. We just want to make sure that, if we're involved in anything that's a little sketchy, a little shady, a little not on the up and up, we understand that we're being blessed right now, but those inner planets move pretty quickly, and we don't want to not have that be the case moving forward, okay? You have everything that you need to move forward with such blessings. It's crazy. It's so beautiful, but you have to act on it, right? So understanding the fifth house, this energy here, honestly, you might be thinking about, a new beginning, because Gemini lives in the third house, which is where Aries is. You want to level up your most important relationships. Maybe you want to get married, you want to get engaged, you want to move in together, or you want to have a child, or you're ready to meet that person, or you want to start that new relationship, or whatever it is, whatever it is. It's so beautiful to talk about, to go after, to strategize. Now, Uranus rules technology. The fifth house is falling in love, love affairs, romance. I mean, you are the sign who is going to be most likely, if you want to, either meeting somebody online, somebody new beginning. There's going to be stability there. Beautiful. Or you're starting some sort of new internet business, some sort of business that's connected to technology. You're also going to be changing the way that you deal with money, which is very interesting. Because you have the vertex in the eighth house here, with the South Node. South Node is not about like totally letting go of something, but it's about handling something differently. So something very fated is going to manifest as you handling your money differently, right? Because you're making these plans, you're moving forward. There is this movement that's happening. Now, that Jupiter conjuncting Venus in the sixth house of health and your day-to-day work environment, this is certainly, to me, likely going to bring some sort of new opportunity. Now, the thing is, initially, it may not exactly be exactly what you want, or it may be exactly what you want, but there are other circumstances that you're needing to iron out before you start that thing. And the reason I'm saying it is because it is working within a close conjunction to Hades and Kronos is feeling very controlled by a situation. But this is very psychological, by the way. It's not that you're really going to be controlled by, but you're going to you feel like you are. And Hades is can feel very isolated, very alone, kind of thing like that. So even though some sort of new opportunity is coming in that space, and it's good, and you're acknowledging that it's good, there's something underneath it where it's like you need to make some sort of change that you feel, I don't want to say sad about, but there's something that where you don't feel totally comfortable to actually share it, out loud. Um, but there's something where you're going to be feeling like a little alone, despite the fact that Venus is so exalted in Cancer. We love this energy in there. There could be something very, positive, but there's something like underneath it that just needs addressing. And that's really not going to dampen the goodness in that space, but it's just about calling it out. Like maybe you get a new job, maybe you have to move because it's in the sign of Cancer and you don't feel totally comfortable with that. Or you're really excited about it, but maybe you don't want to leave your family. Or you know what I mean? It's something like that. I'm just giving that as an example because it's like a very Cancerian type of manifestation. So there's going to need to be some sort of like shift, some sort of change, in that environment having to do with, you know, some sort of connection to the opportunity and like where you're going. Um, but all good. I mean, everything is really good. Anything else I wanted to talk about? I talked about the oppositions. I talked about, yeah, I mean, it just, again, keep in mind that this is going to be the dealio for the next year. So pretty cool, if you ask me. And again, don't sweat the interpersonal planets right now. And again, if you have to have a conversation, have it in the middle of August. Okay, even though Mercury's still going to be in post shadow, especially if it's a situation that started to manifest before Mercury went retrograde, but you just have to have the conversation. Really nice energy to do it. All right, my friends, I hope that was helpful. See you next time. Bye bye. Hi, Pisces. I hope you guys are doing great. So I'm going to pull up your chart. I queued it up to August 11th. I just want to talk about this, primarily this transit. I'll mention a couple of other things, for the month, but very rare planetary alignment. Hasn't happened since 1844. And we have Pluto here. Pluto is sextiling Saturn, Neptune, and it's trining Uranus. Saturn and Neptune are sextiling Uranus. We have oppositions. We have an opposition between Saturn and Mars. We have an opposition between Pluto and Mercury, right? So we have these energies here, but even the oppositions are sextiling to these really good energies. So it's like even the stuff that's stressful has blessings all around it. So let's unpack what this really means because again, very important. It's been since 1844. That's a very long time. And when we're dealing with the outer planets, we're dealing with life-changing energies. And so this means that the foundation that everything that we're experiencing is sitting on is going to be trined and sextiling each other instead of squares and quincunxes and all this wacky other stuff because like, I mean, that's why everything's been such a hot mess, been so unstable. So now it's finally the foundation of things are finally going to just cool down a little bit because the thing is, you see where Pluto is, Neptune, and they're not moving very far. Even when September 1st comes and Saturn retrogrades back into Pisces, he's still saying at the very late degree of that decan. So he's still going to be. It might be in an outer bounds, but it's still going to be in a sextile with Pluto, still going to be in a sextile to Uranus. whole next year. Wait, we have these energies as our foundation for a bit. Let's just be happy with that. All right. And not be too stressed out over the little like the more personal planets, the Venus, the Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, and the kind of drive our day to day and our emotions and all of that. Okay. But whatever stress that you're going to be feeling going into the middle of August, should be spoken about because you have so much energy to resolve things that have been a little tricky. Okay. I mean, that's first and foremost. But the stress is happening for a reason because the leveling up, no leveling up ever happens without some stress. And even good news can be stressful because there's going to be this requirement to have some sort of like change in how we're viewing things. So for you, you have Pluto in your home in the 12th house, right? It's in Aquarius. We've been talking this to death, right? Pluto in Aquarius, that Aquarius energy is different. It's out of the box. It's revolutionary. Your 12th house is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is about sudden reversals, revolutionary change, very important energy. And Pluto is still retrograde. He does not want to be controlled in that space. And look, the 12th house is also the house of the subconscious, dreams, what it is that we really desire, very artistic, very creative, but it's also self-sabotaging behavior. It's also addiction. So we have to be a little careful there, right? Because it could manifest in a couple of different ways, but it's sextiling Saturn and Neptune in your second house of money, of stability, your sense of self, your self-esteem, what it is that really matters to you. Now, Saturn is very connected to responsibility and stability, and Neptune is about your deepest desires. And Saturn really does give Neptune the stability it needs to manifest those deepest desires. So, in that way, it's very beautiful. And he does not like when Neptune tries to kind of veer into the territory of self-sabotaging behavior and victimhood and addiction. He does not like that, especially in the second house. No. He's going to make it difficult for you if that is the way you wish to manifest that energy, right? Where, when it comes to career, public reputation, standing in the world, you don't want to feel sorry for yourself if you're not happy. Really try to change whatever it is that you can. Having to do with finances, like Saturn wants responsibility and do the work and let's level up. He's going to give you everything that you need. But Neptune, we can lean into our weaknesses a little bit, right? In that space, right? But Saturn means business, and he really wants you to be happy, and he wants you to make money. So when we have these two together, that's what it's got to be. Let me strategize. Let me think about my future. Let me think about my goals and gains. Let me think about where it is that I want to go. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something out of the box than what I am right now. That is the best way to use this energy. Beautiful. Honestly, right? So there's going to be some sort of new approach happening because we have the sextile with Pluto and we also have the sextile to Uranus. These are the two planets of change, right? The top piece of bread is Pluto and the bottom piece of bread is Uranus. And the bologna in the sandwich or the meat in the sandwich is Saturn and Neptune, like this in your second house of money. So you're needing to do something different, out of the box, something different. Uranus in the fourth. Maybe you're working from home. You're doing something connected to technology. Some of you may even be moving. Uranus in the fourth house can bring a move for sure. But it's revolutionary, it's unpredictable, and it's about sudden reversals. So you may suddenly decide to change neighborhoods. You may suddenly decide that you want to do something entirely different. Gemini is very connected to teaching. It's very connected to learning. When I say teaching and learning, let me be clear. It's not higher education. That's more Sagittarius ninth house energy, right? Gemini, like, and even third house energy, but either or, right? They are all about like early education through high school, learning to tie your shoe, ride a bike, learn a new computer program, which would be very likely. Uh, writing can be very involved in here as well. something that would be very well connected to the masses as well, right? Because Uranus is the masses. It's revolutionary. It's different. Your Gemini energy is about writing in the fourth house. Besides being about your emotional stability, it's your home, like working from home, doing something like that, because that Saturn is sextiling. Additionally, we have Pluto energy is trining the fourth house, trining. This is so beautiful. It's easy. This is an easy energy. So easy. We do have to be careful that we don't let it pass us by, right? But that Pluto energy in the 12th, it's the home of the nurse. It's like a caretaker energy as well. Um, just very connected to this. This could be taking a very different approach to your family life, recognizing that your child might be going through something, and you're able to be there for them and help them in a way that's really, really beneficial. Same thing goes for any sort of romantic involvement. Being there for them, being able to help them. Now, let's talk about the tension that might be going on. Looking at this Saturn, it's opposing Mars between the second and the eighth house. This is the money axis. This is the axis of how we um, look at our foundation compared to what somebody else is able to give us. It's a me versus we energy, right? But it's very supported. It's sextiling, Mercury. It's trining Uranus. It's recognizing that things have to be handled differently in the realm of finances, in the realm of, is everybody on the same page when it comes to what they want? But maybe you're not in a relationship at all. And that Mars in that space, you're like, I want to get in front of my debt. I want to pay off my debt. I'm gonna sue that person. I'm gonna get what's coming to me because it's the right thing to do. I'm gonna, because that's that eighth house. This has to do with like legal situations that have a dollar amount attached to it. It has to do with inheritance, insurance payouts as well. But like that Mars energy in there, you are wanting to fight for what is yours, right? Absolutely. Now, the eighth house is also money coming to you from investment. So let's say, for example, I'm just saying this because you have Uranus in there. Let's say you have property or real estate, right? You want to sell it and get the price that you really want, right? But there could be some sort of there could be a couple of challenges here, but you end up on the upside of it, if that makes sense. Which is really good. Like, because let's just say, for example, you purchased, I don't know, a piece of property for, I don't know, um, keep in mind, I live in New York, so, something like 600 grand, okay? But then you sell it for 900. That 300,000 that you are making, you didn't actually put your blood, sweat, and tears into making it, right? So that profit is very eighth house energy. You understand? So with that Mars energy in there, right? And then just follow me here because we have the Mars energy in Libra. Oh man, it's very low. It's cusping with that Virgo energy. Yeah. So it's really wanting to, if you happen to be in that position, right, where you're doing something having to do with property, real estate, any sort of inheritance, anything having to do with that, anything even having to do with being very strategic with how it is that you pay off your debt. Right? Maybe you're doing debt consolidation. Maybe you're working out payment plans, something like that. Great energy to do that if you're in the place where you need to do that, right? Very nicely indicated there. Really nice. And another opposition we're dealing with is this Pluto is at 2 degrees in the sign of Aquarius, and then we have this Mercury energy in the sign of Leo. So we have it in this opposition. It's only 2 degrees away from each other in this opposition. So Pluto is very, very controlling. And here we have in that 12th house having to do with your subconscious, having to do with uh, it could also be something connected to your children where you're feeling like very, how do I explain what it is that I'm feeling? Like, do I want to say tunnel vision? Tunnel vision sounds negative. Like you feel very committed, right, to having something be a certain way. Now it's opposing that Mercury in Leo. Leo's our children, sixth house has to do with health. So there could be some sort of like diagnosis that went on with what goes on with one of your kids. It might be stressing you out initially. Everything's going to be okay, Pisces. You are so beautifully aspected for you to be able to get the help that you need. This is something that whatever changes are going on right now in that arena are ultimately going to end up being a good thing for you at the end of the day, right? As like I say, all's well that ends well. Even if it's a little stressful, have the open communication. Look, because I always want to show you Mercury, look at Mercury, right? It's sextiling Mars, it's sextiling Uranus. It's trining Saturn and Neptune. Have the conversations, especially if you need to talk to any doctors about your child, if you need to straighten out any sort of situation having to do with responsibilities in a relationship, having a conversation about how responsibilities are designated in the day-to-day work environment, have these conversations in the middle of August. Really, really good. Are they in opposition? Yes. They're in opposition, but they're also sextile and trine all over the place. Okay. So very, 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 very supportive month, guys. It really is. I like it a lot. I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.